one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, September 14th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 11 degrees, 10 degrees in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Election Day is only 6 days away now, and the latest polling shows a complete deadlock between the Liberals and Conservatives. City News reporter Jamie Pulfer breaks down the numbers as federal party leaders head into the home stretch.
We're finding that this is basically a two-way race between the Liberals and Conservatives in this fight for votes as the clock counts down to Election Day, less than a week from now. We have 3 new polls out, and none really paint a clear picture of how this is going to play out. A Leger poll, in collaboration with the Canadian Press, suggests that both the Liberals and Conservatives are tied with 32% support, the NDP in third with 20%. An Angus Reid survey and then another one from the Signal for the Toronto Star give the Conservatives a slight lead over the Liberals, just over 32% compared to just over 30%. And again, the NDP in third place. This as the leaders continue to battle it out on the campaign trail. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is in Kitchener and Windsor today. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau is in Richmond, BC, while Conservative leader Erin O'Toole is in Ottawa. I'm Jamie Pulfer.
City News time, 9:01, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
The clouds will increase. We'll get into some showers late this afternoon, but most of the activity was storms and showers after midnight. Some of these storms could bring very strong wind overnight. The high 22 degrees today will feel like 27, 17 for the low. Tomorrow, some early morning showers or thunderstorms with a high 21. For today, the high 22.
And right now it's 11 degrees in Ottawa, 10 degrees in Smiths Falls. Now, what about the extended outlook? Fall arrives next week. The Weather Network predicting the season will bring some warm spells to much of the country. Chief Meteorologist Chris Scott says most of the province will see above normal temperatures and a typical number of rainy days. But Ontario and Quebec will see warmer temperatures across the heart of the season. Scott does warn there could be an early start to winter, though, coming up in mid-November. South of the border, Nicholas struck the Texas coast as a Category 1 hurricane early this morning. It's now a tropical storm located south-southwest of Houston. About 350,000 people right now without electricity because of that storm. City News time, 9:02. Ottawa police are looking for a man who sexually assaulted a 15-year-old girl. Now, this happened about 8:30 in the morning last Friday. Police say the girl was with a group of friends in the La Perriere Avenue and Cavan area when the man, not known to them, approached and sexually assaulted the teen. The man described as late 30s to early 40s, white, possibly with a tan. He's about 5 feet 9 inches tall with a stocky build. Now, he has dark curly hair, a full beard, and was wearing glasses. Anyone with any information is asked to contact Ottawa Police. A full picture of COVID-19 in Ontario schools difficult to assess yesterday because the provincial government dashboard detailing cases in school and daycare still has not been updated. Last time it was July. The government said the portal will be active, though, within the next few days. And Health Minister Christine Elliott has an announcement that's scheduled for 1 o'clock this afternoon. She'll be joined by Dr. Kieran Moore, the Chief Medical Officer of Health for Ontario. It's likely going to be an update on the vaccine certificate app. The announcement comes with just 8 days from you needing to show proof of vaccination to enter non-essential businesses. The Passport app isn't expected to be available, though, until mid to late October. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Inform your opinions.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Good morning, Ottawa, and welcome to the Rob Snow Show. Rob off all week long. Derick Fage here filling in. Feeling good today. Feeling good. You should be too, because, you know, we're a little sick of talking about the election. Now, that's not to say we're not going to talk about the election. Please don't call David and say, this is ridiculous. It's the final week of the election, Derick. We must talk about the election. Of course we will. Of course we will. But we want to distract you for a few moments because, by the way, you can check out my Facebook page, Derick, D-E-R-I-C-K, Fage, F as in Frank, A-G-E. Head over there because I put it out there this morning, okay? Talking about what are your complaints when it comes to the City of Ottawa? Do you think the City of Ottawa is doing a good job spending your tax dollars? What can they improve on? So far, in limited time that I've put up this post this morning, things have exploded. Some of you not happy. My wife has even put in her opinion. My brother on Twitter has shared his opinion with me. So there's some passion to this, okay? Do you feel like we're getting good municipal services for your tax dollars? All right? Why are we bringing this up today? Well, there are a few items in the media that don't reflect well on our local leadership. So let's take a look, shall we? Let's take a look at some things. First up, we've got Manotick trucks. This scoop comes courtesy of the local bureau of our public broadcaster. Basically, the Manotick Community Association was so fed up with inaction from the city on an issue that was important to their neighborhood that they went out and did their own study and report on the issue that they sent to their area councillor. God, I love you people in Manotick. Yes, you're hearing me right. A local community group did their own study and wrote a report to the city because they weren't getting any attention on the file. It all has to do with heavy truck traffic in the village of Manotick, where the local association says they've counted nearly 90 heavy construction trucks, not per week, not per day, per hour, rumbling through residential streets on their way to the massive housing developments in the new parts of Barrhaven. Hey, I love you, Barrhaven, by the way. Love you, Manotick. Great areas. Why do we even have city staff if community associations are out here doing their own traffic studies? And what's more, even after all this, the city has no interest in reviewing the permitted trucking route that sees 89 construction vehicles per hour weaving their way down Manotick's Main Street, leaving tire marks on curbs and sidewalks and having near misses with pedestrians every day, according to the community association. What is your municipal government there for, if not for something just like this, right? I mean, we complain a lot in this city, and I'll get to, you know what, I'll get to how much we complain, because we set some record numbers so far during the pandemic about complaints. But this is a legitimate complaint. 89 heavy trucks an hour down Manotick's Main Street. Seems like a no-brainer. Somehow reroute hundreds of dangerous construction vehicles off of a traditional main street in a business area, right? So it sounds pretty easy. Maybe there has to be some kind of truck emergency declaration. I mean, just like the climate emergency declaration, I mean, city council will say, we have a truck emergency. They're not going to do anything about it, but they will tell you, listen, we heard you, and we are declaring a truck emergency in the city of Ottawa. Not going to do anything about it, but now we've declared it, and we can pat ourselves on the back. There we go. Okay, then there's OC Transpo. Oh, yes, everyone's favorite transit operator back in the news. Headline is OC Transpo's 2021 revenue loss double what was budgeted. Now, to be fair, and I'm a fair guy, I'm a fair man. We've been going through a pandemic. I mean, ridership is down exponentially. And not just because we can't keep trains on the track and axles properly working. We actually have, we've had lockdowns. People have been reluctant to get into tight areas and close quarters with each other due to, a global pandemic. So OC Transpo expecting to be approximately 17 million in the red by the end of 2021. This figure is in a new report that will be tabled at the next Transit Commission meeting on Monday. It says the shortfall is largely due to revenue losses due to the pandemic. Of course. We all understand that. Again, you hear me correctly. OC Transpo is going to be out $17 million this year because of the pandemic, the same pandemic that's been going on since the start of 2020. Did it sneak up on them? The pandemic? No, again, to be fair, ridership is down. I mean, where are we going to get, funds from? The budget reflected COVID-19 lost revenue of $60 million, but the revised estimate revenue loss for 2021 is $132.2 million, which is due, as I said, to lower ridership and lower than expected advertising revenues. You know those landscape posters that they put on the buses and on the O train? They're just not selling as many of those. It's really shocking because that's a way to connect with people. I'm sorry. I feel bad for the city of Ottawa. This is an unexpected situation. Now, let me just say on the flip side, do we complain too much in this city? Okay. Ottawans made more than 11,000 more calls to bylaw between April 2020 and March 2021 in the previous 12-month period. An increase, by the way, of 20%. Most of the complaints coming from noise, pets, property maintenance, and construction work. People particularly miffed by loud music. Music too loud. By the way, 7,038 comments. Most of those complaints coming from the Rideau Vanier area, which is my area. And I promise you, good neighbors, it's not. My wife and I have not been playing loud music. We're very conscientious of our neighbors. Most common calls, okay, music too loud, 7,030. Exterior debris and waste, 4,700. Injured animal, 2621, which is sad to see. Grass and long weeds. You do not like your neighbors to have long grass and long weeds because 2,349 complaints. Complaints about shouting. Wow. This pandemic has really got us on edge because there's over 2,100 complaints about shouting, dog barking in 7th place at 2,073. As I mentioned, most vocal wards, my ward, Rideau Vanier, also Somerset Ward and Rideau Rockcliffe. Those are your top three. So we want to talk about that in the Talk Back Hour today. All right, that's going to be our main topic. We may come up with a few. We of course probably talk a little bit of election as well. But that's going to be our talk back. Do you think the city of Ottawa is doing a good job spending your tax dollars? What are some of your top complaints? Those of you that have reached out to me on Facebook with your many complaints, I will read them as well during the talk back hour. That's at 10 o'clock, remember? Right after the 10 o'clock news, you give David a call. He finds out if you're sane enough to be on the radio, okay? And then we take your call. We have a respectful discussion and or debate. Okay, let's check on the campaign trail. 6 days to go before we head to the polls on Monday, and the gloves have officially come off. Justin Trudeau, Aaron O'Toole, just battling it out. Both went negative at campaign stops on Monday, both trying to paint unattractive pictures of what life will be like in Canada under a Tory or Liberal government. Okay, we're going to start with O'Toole this morning. We started with Justin Trudeau yesterday, so to be fair, let's start with Aaron O'Toole. Yesterday morning, he was in Ottawa's far west end of Carp Road. Beautiful Carp, making an announcement about support for new parents in the Conservative platform, and he took the opportunity to put the screws to Trudeau in a way we haven't yet seen. The Conservative leader's message was clear. This is not the same sunny ways Justin Trudeau you voted for in 2015.
What would the sunny ways Justin think of the Prime Minister we see today? The one who is clinging to power by dividing the country, fostering fear and division, sowing mistruths and misinformation wherever he goes. The one who says he's a feminist, but pressured a woman to lie to cover up his corruption. The one who preaches honesty and transparency while funneling cash to Liberal insiders. The one who talks about reconciliation while suing Indigenous children. The one who talks about the environment while pumping record emissions into the air. The one who says one thing, and then immediately does the opposite. I'd say he's all talk and no action, but this is worse. A person so blinded by his own ambition that he can't see the rot in his own party. A man who is not a feminist, not an environmentalist, not a public servant. A man who's focused solely and squarely on himself.
Whoa, few body blows there. Few body blows. All right, as for Liberal leader, as Rob would say, required reading this morning, okay? In the National Post, John Ivison, check this out, them's fighting words in the headlines. And for those of you watching on Rogers TV, you know what I'm talking about. For those of you listening on radio, I'm holding up the newspaper. National Post here. It's the headline, them's fighting words, and that just about sums it up. Ivison makes reference to a clip we played on the show yesterday, obviously John listening to the show, from a rally Trudeau held in Oakville on Sunday evening. If you happen to miss it, here's what it sounds like on the Liberal campaign as they visited Oakville for a rally on Sunday.
We just learned that Mr. O'Toole is just fine with his candidates who aren't fully vaccinated campaigning inside seniors' homes.
Oh, listen to that. Ooh.
Does any of that make sense for our families, for our kids,
No.
for our economy? No, it absolutely does not.
He's a monster.
But you know who it does make sense for? The far-right anti-vax wing of his own party. The mobs of anti-vaxxers who are harassing doctors and nurses, waiters, and business owners. Did you know what he just said to them? That there's room for them in his big tent party. That's who he's chosen. That's the path he wants to take. And it just isn't right.
My goodness. The gloves are off. Okay, in interest of equal time, well, we're also going to check in on NDP leader Jagmeet Singh. He was in Sioux Lookout yesterday, stumping on Indigenous issues, and he took some time to attack Trudeau for his failure on boil water advisories over the last 6 years.
To me, I look at what governments do when they want to get something done. And I look at what Mr. Trudeau did in terms of the zeal that he showed to protect banks. In the beginning 2 weeks of the pandemic, he backstopped the wealthiest banks in our country with $750 billion of financial backstop. That's a lot of zeal when it matters to him.
So the gloves are officially off with 6 days to go. 6 days to go. Hopefully, many of you had a chance to mail in your votes. Some of you perhaps in advance polls. Those are now closed, by the way. Yesterday was the last day of advance polls. Get out there and vote, my friends. We're going to talk about the election further on into the show, of course. But coming up next, Sueling Ching, CEO of the Ottawa Board of Trade, and we have sort of some breaking news to share with you, a big announcement. We're going to talk to Sueling about that and much more. This is Derick Fage filling in for Rob Snow on The Rob Snow Show. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
I'm blessed to be married to someone who is a scientist and spent a lot of time following what was happening over in China ahead of time. So he did give us the heads up that this was coming. Not that we believed him right off the bat, but when it did happen very, very quickly, we were prepared. We had hand sanitizer and we were set up to not close our doors. So we locked the kitchen down at Wellington Street, but we left this kitchen open. We put in protocols immediately. We only allowed our very small crew of 4 or 5 people in at the time. No deliveries were allowed to come in or out of the building without, they just weren't allowed in and out of the building. So we met them at the loading dock and had very strict protocols in place right away. We had masks and hand sanitizer and the whole thing. So we're very lucky from that perspective, and we're able to, learn as we went, as far as doing small, individually packed caterings, the frozen soup program, food for the Ottawa mission. So we didn't have to close the kitchen and then learn how to reopen it. We just were able to modify and shift as we needed to. Because of our partnership with the Ottawa mission, we were able to very quickly help support them. They were able to send us some product and some supplies, so it wasn't a burden on our business, and we were able to supply the staffing and the packaging to help produce that when they needed it the most. And we produced about 1,400 meals a week to complement their meals, and we started our soup program right away. We realized very quickly that there was a need in the community to get together and all work together, not only to support local, but also just to support all the people that were suddenly in a position of, being locked down and not being able to get out. So by starting that soup program, our community, our clients got online and started making donations for the soups, and we were able to produce the soups and get them back out to people that needed it. We're right now currently making 150 liters of soup per week, but we've made, I would say, 5,000 or 6,000, easily since the pandemic. Probably more. I'd have to do the math, but lots. I think everybody in the city has to be very aware of how blessed we were to have great weather this summer and people were able to get out and about, and that's going to shift. So we do have to be much more aware of who our most vulnerable is, and I really think we have to work together as groups. There are so many organizations in the city that are doing something and contributing and working together, and I think it doesn't matter who, but see what you can do to just step up and help them, whatever it is, whether it's driving or delivering food, or someone has extra zucchini in their garden, or if they can afford to donate some money to any of these organizations. I just think we all have to work together. We're smarter and wiser than we were the first time.
Community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
And 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Here is Derick Fage filling in for Rob all week long. Ottawa Board of Trade just made a huge announcement, just sent out a huge announcement. We'll get to that in just a moment, because they've also been doing a federal election survey. They've conducted a federal election survey in partnership and in collaboration with Leger and the Canadian Global Cities Council, a coalition of CEOs from 9 of Canada's largest urban chambers of commerce and boards of trade. And here to report on the findings, the key findings from a survey of 400 residents in Ottawa and over 1,340 members of Ottawa's business community conducted between August 19th and August 30th. We are joined by Sueling, Ching, CEO of the Ottawa Board of Trade. Sueling, how are you this morning?
Good morning, Derick. I'm well. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. Thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it, because it's good to get perspectives from everybody, and in particular, the business community having an opportunity with this survey to find out what they're thinking of. So what are some of the key findings of this particular survey?
Well, I guess for us, we have been working closely with the Canadian and the Ontario Chamber to develop platforms that we knew were important to responding to COVID, to building a strong foundation for recovery, and to get ready for economic growth. And we were pleased to see that a lot of the things that were on the minds of our local community were aligned with those.
Right.
So in general terms, I would say that affordability came out very high in the survey as being important to both the general public and to the business community. The environment came out as a top concern of impacting how people will vote in this federal election. And then I think they were both aligned in that. And then further, for the business community, really interested in those things that will create optimal conditions for an economic recovery. Not surprising, right?
Yeah, for sure.
What our public health response will be, because if there's one thing we've learned, our public health and our economy are intimately intertwined. And then how we can position programs and policies to help the private sector drive our future economic growth.
Yeah, and you've broken it down a little bit as well when it comes to affordability. Significantly more of an issue for younger respondents, correct, than for those over 55?
Yeah, in the general public, for sure, that did come out. But it's very important to business as well, because the thing, and you guys have covered it well, that we've been dealing with is a workforce issues, right, and talent shortage, and that has a huge impact on our ability to maintain stability in our workforce, to attract new talent to our city, and so it's an important issue for business as well, for sure.
You've been an early champion of vaccine passports, Sueling, and the Ottawa Board of Trade is expanding their strategy to help protect businesses from COVID-19, from the fourth wave. Tell me how you're going about doing that.
Well, we were early. We had, started talking to health professionals many months ago when we knew that when the vaccines came, that there would have to be a way to ensure that we were protecting businesses and that we were going to be able to keep them open safely. So we worked with the Ontario Chamber and Health Canada and many chambers across Ontario in the spring to make rapid test kits available to small, medium enterprises in Ottawa. And we saw it as one tool in a toolbox that would create an environment in which businesses could safely stay open. We're also proponents of the Post Promise, along with the City of Ottawa, to build consumer confidence, recognizing those businesses that have made a commitment and declare it to follow the protocols from our health officials, as well as vaccine passports. So the rapid testing kit program has recently been expanded by the Ontario government. Right. And so we were going to wrap that up at the end of August, but now it's going to be expanded until the end of March 2022.
Yeah, and then, so you're putting in pickup locations, right, in the east and west of the capital. I think you said you handed out, more than 52,000 individual tests? Yeah. I mean, that's a big number. Yeah.
It's a big number, Derick, and we did see a bit of a decline in the demand over the summer. Okay. But we have seen an uptake in interest now. As we are moving into the fall, of course, all of us are thinking about how best we can do our part to fight the fourth wave, if you will. And so we have seen an uptake. So we are just working with TCC Canada. They've been a wonderful partner for us. We're going to be at their locations on St. Laurent and at Innovation Drive. And they're going to support us with space and staff. So we're hoping to get the details of that out by the end of this week.
Yeah, and second at those centers, I understand businesses are going to be able to pick up decals for their storefront. I guess that's to show customers, right, that they're taking steps to help protect the greater public.
Yeah, so customers and honestly their employees as well, right? Yeah, it's a public declaration that yes, we recognize the recommendations from our health experts, that we've followed the steps that they have outlined, and we're making a commitment to keep this business safe for employees and to provide confidence to our consumers as well.
Sueling, always a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us here this morning.
I really appreciate your call. Thanks, Derick.
Our pleasure. That's Sueling Ching, CEO of the Ottawa Board of Trade, coming up after the break. One of my favorites here, weekly guest, Ian Lee, professor of the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University, with their new shiny building over there. Oh, my goodness. We talked about that yesterday with the Ottawa Business Journal. Just a beautiful facility over there. We're going to talk about Canada overall. How are they doing when it comes to economics? And we're also going to talk a little bit about debt. We talked about that yesterday. Party platforms. We're spending billions of dollars. No one's talking about how to pay for it. This is Derick Fage filling in for Rob Snow on Rogers TV and City News.
1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, September 14th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 13 degrees, Smiths Falls 15. And here's what's making news this hour. We're expecting more news from the province this afternoon on vaccine certificates. Health Minister for Ontario has a briefing plan for 1 o'clock. Now, in just 8 days' time, you will need to show proof of vaccine in Ontario to get into non-essential businesses. Latest polling from 3 different firms indicates what many are thinking. It's going to be another minority government federally. The 2 frontrunners holding the most seats, the question, which will it be in the lead, Liberals or Conservatives? They're virtually tied in those 3 polls mentioned. Election Day comes up on Monday. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is the first out of the gate today, a campaign stop accusing the Liberals of siding with telecom companies and not doing enough to lower cell phone bills. Singh is targeting seats in Toronto, Kitchener, and Windsor today. The Weather Network is out with its fall forecast. Warmer temperatures than normal through the rest of September and October for us. Winter weather, though, may arrive a little bit sooner, leading up to the holidays this year at a rate not seen for the past 20 years. City News Time 9:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Derick Fage here filling in for Rob. Rob off all week long, and now we turn our attention to another topic, and that is Canadian economics. Canada has dropped out of the top 10 of the most economically free countries in the world. That is according to a study by the Fraser Institute released on Tuesday. We are joined, as usual, each and every week by Ian Lee, professor of the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. Ian, how are you today?
Good morning, Derick. I'm doing very well.
Good morning, Ian. We were talking yesterday to the Ottawa Business Journal about that beautiful new building you have over there for the Sprott School of Business. You must be pretty excited about that.
We are. We've been wanting this for literally, I've and others, my colleagues, have been wanting this for 30 years, and it was a dream that's finally come true because of the generosity of some very successful Canadian businesses here in Ottawa, and which will lead into our story, I hope, in a moment, because it shows the impact of capital investment in Canada and this particular business that donated so generously to the Sprott School, and we're very happy. We've got a beautiful new building. It's ergonomic. It's environmental. It's got I don't know if it's got a 0 carbon footprint, but it's pretty close. We've got rid of all the waste paper baskets in all the offices. No kidding.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Well, we don't. And we've only got 1 printer for the whole school, I think, or 1 in each floor. We don't have printers in each offices anymore. We're trying to eliminate paper waste and wasteful printing of paper, and so
impressive.
It's a very environmentally advanced building, state of the art, and we're very proud of it. We're very happy.
Yeah, it's an absolute game changer.
I'm sorry I didn't mention the Nickel family, who are very distinguished and successful and honorable members of the Ottawa business community. There's many others, the Greenberg family, that have donated to the hospital system and to education and to the performing arts, and that's why I'm such a strong supporter of business people that go and risk their own money and start up businesses and employ lots of Canadians and pay lots of taxes. We should be celebrating these people, not demonizing these people.
I agree, and too often we do that, and I certainly that's why we love those interviews with the Ottawa Business Journal, because sharing those success stories every week. You hear a lot of negative news when it comes to the business community sometimes. So it's nice to hear some positive.
And I'm glad you're doing that. And I do it whenever I get a chance. And I know I'm not on their payroll. I just think it's shameful that we demonize the banks. I worked for a bank many, many years ago. We have some of the best, most efficient banks, successful banks on planet Earth, safest banks, almost 300,000 good jobs, and yet we demonize the banks. We demonize the pharmaceutical companies who came up with the vaccines that are saving the lives of millions and millions of people, and we're trying to drive them out so that they don't invest in Canada and they invest in Germany instead, or the United States. And we're going to be talking about this in a moment, but there is a connection. I'm trying to connect the dots here, between, successful businesses, and they donate and support their community, and they employ lots and lots of people and good jobs, and then we have some politicians and some parties that think that these are very bad people, and shame on those politicians. And I've called them before on this show. These people are parasites. They're politician parasites. They don't produce any vaccines. They don't produce any drugs to save lives. There's not one politician who's produced. I'm very strong on this because I use advanced biologic drugs for my rheumatoid arthritis, and when I hear them going after the pharmaceutical companies, and they almost seem to be saying, "Stop developing new drugs that are going to help Canadians." I mean, this is
you're right, Ian, and it's a shame. And I'll put the media in the spotlight on that, where too often the media is not sharing any of the positive stories when it comes to the pharmaceutical industry and the great work that they do, and we concentrate on many of the things. There have been stories, negative stories that we should certainly talk about, but the positive stories far outweigh the negative.
There are, and what my other point, of course, has been that if we're going to condemn, let's condemn across the board, and let's condemn NGOs that act irresponsibly. Let's condemn universities that refuse to adopt a vaccine mandate across the country, putting 2 million students and faculty at risk. Let's not only condemn or criticize CEOs of successful companies. Right. Let's apply the critical lens, because the counter response from progressives is, well, are you saying we should cover up wrongdoing? No, I'm saying let's go after everybody.
Let's go
after university presidents that have been acting socially irresponsible. Let's go after environmental groups that have misled us and are trying to shut down oil and gas so we cannot heat our homes at minus 25 in January. Let's put the lens on them as well. That's my point.
Yeah, I took us off the rails here, and I apologize to the good listener and viewer. But we have dropped to out of the top 10 in the most of the most economically free countries in the world, according to this study. Tell us about the study and why it's important, Ian.
It is important, and I'm sure some people will dismiss it because it's the Fraser Institute, but that's not being evidence-based. Whether you like someone or like some entity or some interest group or a think tank is not the issue. The issue is you should look at the data, look at the evidence. And this is an evidence-based report using data from the national statistical agencies of countries in the world.
Right.
And the Economic Freedom Index, it's got one of those sort of titles, I guess, is designed to grab people's attention.
Right.
But the underlying logic is what they're trying to measure using a pretty good, sophisticated methodology is which countries, not companies, which countries are most attractive for capital investment. And capital investment, because we're going to be talking, I think, about the proposal by the NDP to impose a wealth tax. In a moment. Capital investment is critical because capital investment is what organizations, companies, investors with wealth do when they create a new business or they build a new factory. Or they put money into developing a new drug, a new vaccine, or a new drug that will cure cancer or address cancer. These capital investments create the jobs of tomorrow. And capital is increasingly mobile in this modern 21st century. And I've actually teach this in my classes, how companies, and I'm talking multinationals now really, that are in multiple countries, they have choices. They do not have to put all their money investment in Canada. They can invest in Germany.
Yeah.
Great country. Yep. They can invest in the United States. They can invest in France. They can invest in UK. They can invest in Singapore. They can invest in China. They can invest. There's okay, there's 195 countries at the UN. Let's agree that maybe 2/3 probably don't want to invest there because they're corrupt, because they've got all kinds of civil problems and social problems and so forth. Well, the OECD countries, there's 34 of them, the high-income countries. Right off the top, there's 34 countries that are very investable, that an investor can invest in. And so what this list is doing is saying, okay, which countries are the most attractive from the perspective of an investor? Imagine, and because I'm not rich, I keep saying that, but imagine I had
you and me both.
Yeah. Let's imagine you or I had control of a large amount of money, several $1 billion. I didn't say it was our money, but we were a decision maker of a company or an organization, a pension fund, that had several $1 billion to invest. Well, the first question is, where am I going to invest it? Mm-hmm. Am I going to put it into Canada? Or am I going to put it into the States? Am I going to put it into Germany? And so companies and investors have choices. They are not captive creatures where they have to put it into one country. And so this list tries to measure the attractiveness from an investor point of view of different countries. And Canada, for many, many years, as long as I could remember, was in the top 10, which was a vote of confidence in our economy.
Right.
Our productivity, our educated workforce, because these are some of the variables.
So why are we falling out of the top 10? What are the causes?
Our climate, and that's the word I'm using. I'm not referring to environment climate. I'm referring to climate in the sense of the investment climate, taxation, the attitude of the politicians and the government, the laws that are being passed by Parliament have become, they're seen by investors as less and less attractive because our laws, for example, on the environment, are becoming so extraordinarily stringent. And so those people are saying, are you saying we should rape the environment? Of course I'm not. Should we destroy the environment? Of course not. But we have developed now standards that are so far above almost every other country in the world that it's causing mining companies and natural resource companies to go to other countries and invest there.
And it seems to be political, Ian, because when you look at the top issues that matter to Canadians, the climate is up there. And I've been honest, I'm a bit of a granola cruncher, Birkenstock wearing, tree planting guy, but I also have an understanding that this is a global issue more than anything else. It is a global issue. And should we be doing something? Absolutely. But when we're responsible for less than 2%, should it be the top of mind on Canadians when it comes to electing your next government?
Right. And Derick, I don't want to leave your listeners with the Economic Freedom Index isn't only looking at environmental policy. They're looking at capital gains taxes. They're looking at corporate income tax rates. They're looking at the minimum wage. They're looking at the educated workforce. They're looking at the productivity of the economy. Our productivity is significantly below the U.S. Total factor productivity, to use the buzzword, is around 25% below the U.S. All in, the workers and our technology investment, our capital investment, is less productive per unit of output than the U.S., which means the U.S. is more attractive on that dimension. So what this list does is take all of these variables, of which there are many, many, many variables, to measure the country, any country, in terms of how attractive it is. And they put it into the mix, and then they come up with a list, and they rank countries. It's a relative list. They're not saying Canada is a disaster. They're not saying it's a terrible place. They're just saying there are better places to invest than Canada.
And these business leaders, look at this very seriously.
They do, because it confirms. I mean, there is a whole area of consulting, and in companies there are people who specialize in so-called country risk analysis, and you analyze countries not just in political risk of riots and insurrections, all kind of expropriation risk, what are the tax risk, and so on. All of these variables, and we have for half a century or more, we've been a destination because it's been such an attractive place to invest in. And what's happened in the last 5 years, and I can support what I'm saying with empirical data. In fact, David Dodge talked about this in his famous speech last September in Toronto. Capital investment has been declining very significantly. Actual, this isn't theory, this isn't opinion, actual real investment of dollars has been declining. More and more Canadian wealth is investing outside of Canada instead of inside Canada.
Right.
And not only David Dodge has talked about this, but other investors are talking about this. Professor Jack Mintz at the University of Calgary has been talking about this. So this has been documented. And, of course, that capital investment it produces the jobs of tomorrow. And those jobs all pay taxes. And so that means tax revenues flow into the government. And so when your capital investment goes down, as it's doing now, investors are voting with their wallet and saying, you know what, I've got better places to invest my money.
Right.
And so this is going to hurt us, not them.
I think we've lost a reasonable balance in this country. I think that's part of the problem when it comes to business and investing in it. Ian, I have to take a quick break.
Yes.
After the break, we'll sort of wrap up this discussion and we'll move on because there's probably a correlation here, and you can probably bridge it, is the fact that, we've got billions in new debt for future generations here in this country to have to deal with. Should the parties be talking more about that? How can we pay that off? And it's obviously political suicide to tell people you're going to do it through taxes, but we've got to look at it in some way. So we'll be back with Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University right after the break. This is Derick Fage filling in for Rob Snow on Rogers TV and City News.
This affected us big time because when, you know how we are seasoned, we have clothes for the spring, clothes for the winter. That time, lots of clothes didn't arrive on time from Europe or from here because some factory shut down. So, and this put us in an odd position. We received not all the merchandise, part of the merchandise. And people, and for us, we have to be careful, especially with the virus going on. It did affect the business, of course, like everybody else. We're not immune, and since the government helped, this did a little bit good for us too, but still affected all the sectors, especially clothing. You can see big corporation affected bad because nobody was thought it's gonna be like this. Earthquake might happen, we joke about it before, things might happen, but this was like a third war, but with a virus. So how to survive, that's the question, and we're doing our best to work with the mall, especially rent in a mall is very high. The government, they have certain, let's say, condition, like how many people will be in the mall or in the stores, etc. Yeah, it's a big factor, but of course, if my store has a back doors, or just will be better, it will be much better. At least we can have curbside much easy, because we have to shut down completely, And this left a mark on us, on everybody too. People always ask me, go online. Certain things you can't go online. Let's say T-shirt, certain product people don't know how to fit, but when it comes to clothing. It's different completely. Let's say I have a customer comes, you can give him 44, but certain suit he might take 42, certain suit he might take 46. So, and how could, suit is not gonna fit the same. And I see people come back and they show me what they got online and not the same fabric. Mostly young people, but if you really wanna shop, you have to go to the store because everything will be around you. You wanna be sure the color look good, the fit will look good, especially when you spend doesn't matter how much money, 300 or 2,000, You have to try, you have to see what's going on. Please don't be shy, contact us. It will be a pleasure for me to take a suit or coat or anything. Like sometimes people have a funeral, they have things, they have a wedding, they don't want to come to the mall. If I get all the information, I will go and meet them at their home or their business offices. I'm gonna start doing that, and this will help the business and help the people. Like they're afraid to come to the mall for time being, or they're too busy at work. They cannot go anywhere at certain times, so I'm glad to do that.
Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derick Fage here, filling in for Rob all week long. We've been talking about Canada having dropped out of the top 10 most economically free countries in the world. That, according to a study by the Fraser Institute, we're down into 14th place. And by the way, this is based on 2019 data. So that's before the impact of COVID-19, before the impact of the pandemic. And it assesses, government regulation, freedom to trade internationally, size of government, property rights, government spending, taxation, and on and on. Again, joined by Professor Ian Lee, Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. And Ian, to wrap this up, I mean, what would your advice be if you had the ear of the next leader of this country? What would your advice be to see us get back into that top 10?
I would love to have that opportunity, and I would say, because I speak bluntly and I speak truth to power, I would say all the rhetoric that was hostile to business in the last campaign, delete it from your memory cells. Get rid of it. Anyone around you who talks like that, fire them. In other words, house cleaning. Just like you got to do when you're an NFL team in dead last place, you got to fire everybody. Fire the coaches, fire the assistant coaches, get rid of the quarterback. House cleaning time.
I hear you. I'm a Miami Dolphins fan, so I know exactly how that feels.
And my beloved Green Bay Packers, maybe the time is coming. Maybe it's time to have a house cleaning. We don't yet know. Maybe it's time that Aaron Rodgers, maybe he really doesn't want to play football. Maybe he just wants to be a prima donna on Jeopardy and doesn't want to play football anymore. Well, if that's the case, send him off to Hollywood.
What a shame. What a shame. I know we're going off the rails again, but what a shame that story. Aaron Rodgers, I mean, I love the guy, and he's just totally turned me off. He's just so come across as so selfish. All right,
he's not focused. So what the new prime minister, the next prime minister, could be Justin Trudeau, I don't know, I'm not predicting, should be focused like a laser beam. And if they want to say, well, that's all very nice, what does that mean? Well, I would say have a 30-minute meeting with a former central bank governor David Dodge, who has actually mapped out a plan of what the government should do. And it's focused on turning around our declining productivity. It's focused on revitalizing and making Canada more attractive for business, capital, investment. And if you don't want to talk to David Dodge, talk to Don Drummond. He's been writing pieces in the CD Howe and the Globe and Mail about what we've got to do. They're both on the same page. The third one, Jack Mintz, I would create an advisory committee of those three people advising the Prime Minister, who would be giving him advice, believe me, that is completely the opposite of what you're hearing from the Liberal Party platform or from Jagmeet Singh and the NDP. We have to focus. We're going into an aging world where the aging of the society, because of people like me, are going to drag down, the aging is going to drag down long-term GDP growth, and in plain English, that means less monies are going to flow into the coffers of the federal and provincial governments. Because there's lots of people who still say, go GDP, I don't care about that, that's just for rich people.
Yeah.
No, GDP means jobs.
Ian, can't we just print more money, for God's sakes? Let's just make it easy on everyone and print more money and get us out of this debt. Because, it's interesting that you mentioned Don Drummond, because in his politics briefing, this is with Ian Bailey and Bill Curry, he sees a common theme in the party platforms, and that's billions in new debt for future generations, because there's no ideas on how to pay this off. And I'm not suggesting they're going to come up with, oh, you know what, we're going to have a COVID tax like we had the war tax, and, after 18 to 25 years, we'll stop with that because that would be political suicide. But they have to talk about paying off the debt in some way without it being political suicide. I mean, does the average person even care, and should we?
Well, we should care because, of course, the chickens will come home to roost. There may be people who believe in free lunches. I don't. You do bad things for a long period of time, and sooner or later it comes home to bite you. I'm not trying to be proselytizing here, but, you smoke for a very long time, and guess what? It's going to hit you. That's why I quit smoking 35 years ago,
22 for me.
You do bad things, and eventually it catches up with you. And we're doing lots of bad things right now. We're piling on enormous amounts of debt, and it's going to catch up with us. I'm not saying it's the end of the world. We went through a crisis in 1995, largest downsizing in Canadian history. Something like that. Or one of the provinces already happened in Newfoundland and Labrador, where the bond markets just won't buy their bonds anymore because they've become so deeply indebted. So the chickens will come home to roost. We will be running into a crisis in the not too distant future, and the burden is going to fall on young people because they've got many, many more years in this world than I do or the boomers do, because that's just a reality. Older people have less time left, and it's going to fall on young people. And so this idea we could just print and print and print and run up huge amounts of debt without consequence, without consequence, is just a juvenile fantasy.
What about a higher corporate tax rate? That's what we hear. You know, you mentioned the NDP plan of raising the corporate tax rate for all corporations by 3%. The Liberals pledging to impose higher corporate tax rates on banks and insurance companies with profits over $1 billion. Do these types of increases work at all in paying off debt?
Let's use hard numbers because I'm evidence-based. And this number's from Finance Canada budget. Okay. The budget documents of Finance Canada, and they're long-term numbers. These are averages year after year after year. Personal income taxes account for 50% of the total revenues of the government of Canada. The GST, if I'm quoting from memory, I think is another 15 or 20% of revenues. So in other words, HST and PST, personal income taxes, are about 3/4 of the totality of government revenues. Right. Corporate income taxes, the last time I checked, was about 13%. You're not going to balance the budget, I don't believe, on 13%. That's the first point. Okay. The second point is, and it comes back to what I said earlier, capital is mobile. And instead of saying, well, they're not paying enough, which is what Jagmeet Singh says, and I'm not picking on him, it's just because he said it. Right. So let's use what he said. Okay? That's the wrong question. He says they're not doing their fair share. We've got a benchmark. This is what Florida used to say. You got to benchmark what the other countries are doing, the major countries, the OECD, wealthy, high-income, successful, attractive to business countries, and say, what are they doing? Just like in the NFL, you got to look at your competitors. Just like you're running a flower business, you got to look at what your competitors are doing. Mm-hmm. If you're a bank, you got to look at what the other banks are doing. You cannot live in a fantasy world where you don't look at your competitor countries, and they are competing for capital investment. So the first thing that they should do is say, how much are they charging in the States, which is our single largest partner and competitor, both, and say, we cannot get out of line with the U.S. or major economies like Germany, which is the 4th largest economy in the world. I'm not talking China. Notice I'm not talking China. Yeah. Okay, I'm talking big Western countries that are open to business. I mean, they have pharmaceutical investment up the wazoo in Germany and Switzerland. How come they're getting that investment and we're not? Well, because they don't demonize pharmaceutical companies. They make it attractive for those pharma companies to invest there and hire thousands and thousands and thousands of really well-paid jobs for German workers, for German people. That's the kind of thing we have to do. We got to benchmark what other major countries are doing, like UK, US, Germany, and so forth, and then say we've got to set our policies accordingly to remain competitive. I'm not giving you an exact precise number because it depends on what they're doing, but we've got to stay in that range. The NDP discussion and platform is oblivious to what the U.S. is doing or Germany's doing, etc.
I think it's oblivious to many, many things. Professor Lee, I've run out of time with you, but always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much again for joining us this week.
My pleasure, Derek. Thank you.
You're very welcome. That's Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. Don't go anywhere. The Talk Back Hour coming up after the break. Do you think the city of Ottawa is doing a good job spending your tax dollars? I already have a ton of comments on Facebook to share with you. Even family members are reaching out with their complaints, and actually a positive as well from one of my family members. So we'll be back talking about that. Do you think the city of Ottawa is doing a good job spending your tax dollars? Give us a call after the 10 o'clock news at 750-1310. Derick Fage filling in for Rob Snow.
news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, September 14th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 13 degrees, 15 in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Liberals and Conservatives tied with 32% support in the latest Leger poll. This one was done for the Canadian Press. The NDP in third at 20%. That party leader, Jagmeet Singh, is taking the Liberals to task over your cell phone bill this morning. Speaking in front of the downtown headquarters in Toronto of our parent company, Rogers, Singh accused the Liberals of siding with the telecom giants.
Voting for Mr. Trudeau is going to cost you. It's going to mean that he's going to continue to not take on the big telecom companies, allow them to exploit you. And we're standing in front of Rogers. There's a Rogers-Shaw merger in the talks. We think that's going to make things even worse. It's going to be even more of a monopoly.
Now, that $26 billion merger would combine Canada's two largest cable operations. The Competition Bureau currently studying whether it should be allowed. Now, at 11 o'clock, both Liberal leader Justin Trudeau in BC and Erin O'Toole for the Conservatives in Russell will have announcements. City News Time 10:03, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
The clouds will increase. We'll get into some showers late this afternoon, but most of the activity was storms and showers after midnight. Some of these storms could bring very strong wind overnight. The high 22 degrees today will feel like 27, 17 for the low. Tomorrow, some early morning showers or thunderstorms with a high 21. For today, the high 22.
And right now, 13 degrees in Ottawa. It's 15 in Smiths Falls. And looking a little bit further down the line, fall is only a week away. Patio season may stick around for a while, though. The Weather Network's fall outlook says it could be pretty good in September and October for Ontario.
It's been a summer marked by historic wildfires, drought, and record-breaking heat. And if you thought the fall would bring a little more predictability, think again.
We're back into that typical fall roller coaster where you pretty much have to check the forecast every day and have your wardrobe as wide as can possibly be.
Chief meteorologist with the Weather Network, Chris Scott, says for the most part, warmer than normal temperatures are predicted in Ontario through the rest of September and into October. But sticking with the roller coaster theme, hold on tight because come late fall, we could be in store for a lot of wintry weather, perhaps leading to a stormy December like we haven't seen in 20 years. I'm Mitch Burke.
And we're learning more about the testing protocol for unvaccinated people who work in education.
In a memo to all boards issued just yesterday, the Deputy Education Minister says testing is to be done at home and no more than 48 hours before coming to work. Unvaccinated staff must be tested twice weekly, and the memo says there should be at least 3 days between tests. Unvaccinated employees will also have to watch a video about COVID-19 vaccinations, and they'll also need to input their test results into an app. All school boards are to introduce vaccination policies by September 27th. I'm Laura Carney.
And I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310. All right, here we go. It's the 10 o'clock talk back hour. Open for your calls. It's your hour. We are reaching out to you today, Ottawa, not to talk about the election. We want to talk about your city. Do you think the city of Ottawa is doing a good job spending your tax dollars? My Facebook feed is already blown up about this particular question. Got a couple of feedbacks on Twitter. Want to hear your thoughts? Give us a call, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Derick Fage here filling in for Rob Snow. Do you think the city of Ottawa is doing a good job spending your tax dollars? Okay? Want to move away from the election just for a little bit. Okay, don't worry. We'll get back to the election. Very important. We're going to talk more election, but it's a very simple question for you this morning. Do you feel like you're getting good municipal services for your tax dollars? Why are we bringing this up today? A few items in the media that don't reflect well on our local leadership. So let's take a look. So first up, I mentioned this earlier at the top of the show. So forgive me for repeating myself, but for those of you that are just tuning in now, we've We've got Manotick trucks. This scoop comes courtesy of the local bureau of our public broadcaster. Basically, the Manotick Community Association, so fed up with inaction from the city on an issue that was important to their neighborhood, that they went out and did their own study and report on the issue that they ended up sending to their area city councillor. A local community group, you're hearing this right, a local community group did their own study and wrote a report to the city because they weren't getting any attention on a file. It all has to do with heavy truck traffic in the village of Manotick. Beautiful place, by the way. You know, looking for a little day trip, head over to Manotick, that main street. Beautiful. Just watch for trucks when you're crossing the road, okay? The local association says they've counted nearly 90 heavy construction trucks, not per week, not per day, per hour, rumbling through residential streets on their way to the massive housing developments in the new parts of Barrhaven. Because we know when it comes to development in this city, we must spread our wings as far as possible, take up as much land as possible, cut as many trees down as possible, and then build developments with zero sidewalks and no bike lanes. Or if we do have bike lanes, they lead to absolutely nowhere at some point during our damn bike ride. Why do we even have city staff if community associations are out here doing their own traffic studies? I almost sounded like Ian Lee there. Our own traffic studies, Derick. And what's more, even after all this, the city has no interest in reviewing the permitted truck route that sees 89 construction vehicles per hour weaving their way down Manotick's main streets. According, by the way, to the community association, they're leaving tire marks on curbs and sidewalks, near misses with pedestrians every day. Cyclists, by the way, in Manotick on those main streets, I'm sure they fear for their lives, you know. Honestly, I mean, that many construction vehicles, it seems like an insane amount. So what is your municipal government there for, if not for something just like this? Give us a call, 613-750-1310. We've got some lines open. It seems like a no-brainer to reroute hundreds of dangerous construction vehicles off a traditional main street and business area, right? Maybe there has to be some kind of truck emergency declared. Huh? Remember when we declared a climate emergency here in Ottawa and, then went on to do absolutely nothing? Not that it's a municipal jurisdiction anyway, by the way. You know, it's just city councillors feeling good about themselves. You know what? Did you? I declare it too. Yes, yay for me. Let's declare a truck emergency, and then we can feel good about ourselves as city council and say, listen, we declared the emergency. We're doing nothing about it, but we're declaring emergency. 750-1310. Then there's OC Transpo. There should be some calls now. Everyone's favorite transit operator is back in the news. Here's the headline. OC Transpo's 2021 revenue loss double what was budgeted. OC Transpo expecting to be approximately $17 million in the red by the end of 2021. This figure is in a new report that will be tabled at the next Transit Commission meeting on Monday. It says the shortfall is largely due to revenue losses due to the pandemic. Yes, of course. Makes complete sense. Ridership is down. And no one should be surprised about that, right? They've had a few difficulties with trains. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but they've had a few difficulty with trains. And, I don't know how they're built. I mean, unbelievable. Again, you hear me correctly. OC Transpo going to be out $17 million this year because of the pandemic. Report goes on, with the pandemic stretching into the fall of 2021. City staff say projected revenue losses are more than double what the city initially budgeted. The budget reflected COVID-19 lost revenue of $60 million, but the revised estimated revenue loss for 2021 is, wait for it, $132.2 million. Slightly more than $60 million. Again, they say, which we all recognize is due to lower ridership and lower than expected advertising revenues. I know we need the advertising dollars, don't get me wrong. But are they really having an impact, those landscape little posters in buses? And the problem is, let's be honest, we're all doing this. We're not even looking up at our fellow citizen anymore, let alone an advertisement on the bus and the O train, because we're too busy on here. And then we're getting advertisements about things we don't need on here instead of things we probably would need on here, because most of the advertising is local up there.
I just want to know how dependent on the advertising the bus ads is OC Transpo. What share of their total budget is being made up by these bus ads?
And you know, which is a great question, David, because
you've got
you can't be paying a lot of money.
60 million was what they forecasted. Now it's 132 million.
Yeah.
That's not a small difference. That's like when I go out to the bar and say I'll spend $60 and then I spend 132. That's one thing. But this is a transit operator.
Yeah. Let's say you and Rob, you approach management here and you say, listen, we want to advertise this fantastic show, right? The most entertaining radio show in the country. We want to advertise this. Rob goes and pitches this to head office. You know, like, what are you really paying for? I like, how much on a monthly basis does it cost to put one of those posters up in the bus or on the O train? I think this is like $10 a month or something. I don't know. So let me read this again. OC Transpo budgeted a loss of $60 million in revenue this year, and it turns out it's going to be $132 million. If only we had more advertising with posters on buses, we could tackle this, or in bus shelters, right? After all the bailout money from the province and the delaying of capital costs and rating of reserve funds to cover the losses, we're still going to be out $17 million. Ridership is still sitting at about 30% of pre-pandemic levels, by the way. So far, the only operational cost-cutting measure OC Transpo has taken was to temporarily suspend some downtown routes over the summer. That's what it's come to. We're paying millions of dollars every week to drive empty buses all over the city, and I understand people's reluctance. Listen, it's close quarters. We're in the middle of a fourth wave of a pandemic, and you know what's going to... the scary part for me... And I listen, I hope it happens. I believe in public transit. We need public transit. We waited too long to get public transit. That's why it's an insane amount of money and time it takes to put the infrastructure together. And many of you on my Facebook page complaining about the insane amount of construction in this city. I understand all of that. But what's going to be very difficult is people get into habits. And their habit now is driving their car, right? They get to sit in there and listen to the music they want to listen to. They don't have to sit beside somebody in their vehicle. They have time to themselves. They have time to think. They have time perhaps to carpool and talk to a friend on the way to work. It is going to be extremely difficult to get people back on public transit. And I am encouraging you to do so. I'm just sharing what I believe is the reality. Okay, Derick's rant is over for the time being because we need to take a break. But my rant will continue because something stinks in Orleans. Okay, something stinks in Orleans, and I'm not talking about the neighborhood. It's not a dig on the neighborhood. I love you, Orleans people. Orleanites, I don't even know what we would call you. Orleanites, I go to the Orleans often. I live in the, center town, so that's one of my easy commutes to go and visit. Go find new little gems of stores in Orleans, but something stinks. I'll be back with that. And, of course, with your phone calls, we've got just a couple of lines open. Give us a call, 613-750-1310. This is Derick Fage filling in for Rob Snow on Rogers TV and City News.
Opening a business especially in a pandemic, in that kind of situation, is very challenging. First, People don't know me. People don't know my product. To build a new clientele, to build a trust for them, to show them that I care about it. I do love my food. That was the biggest challenge. And of course, in all lockdown, where I had to face it regards my employee, girls, ladies, what they work for me. I didn't want to tell them, sorry, I'm closed, I'm not having a job for you. No, they have a families, they have kids to feed. So this is very important because we are family orientated. And we decided to open. We, of course, essential business. So been very tough, very, very tough, as we didn't see people on the road. Market was completely quiet, but we knew it that we have to wait, and we knew it that we're gonna be fine. In this town, we built online shop, Vedel Online, and we did Uber Eats, which one is picking up and is very, very popular. We have a really good feedback. So this is the song for my heart. And and we try to expand. I'm thinking about opening another location. So I want to make Vedel famous. I want to make the Vedel place to be for all the families with kids. Try the traditional food, what their grandparents cooked in the countries when they're from, or even Canadian people. They're more than welcome to come and try our famous pierogis. I try to be passionate about my food, organic food made with love, with all homemade, organic. So you can find food from all over the Europe: Polish, German, Ukrainian, Romanian, French, Armenian. So all kind of different types of food. Homemade lunches. We focus on the homemade lunches, grandma style. I keep always saying, like in my Genia Babcia house, how she cooked. I wanted this love and this food over here because I believe that will bring all people around me. And all the organic cold cuts, lovely selection of sausages, cheeses, European cheeses, great selections of mustards, French cookies. All what you need from Europe you can find here at the Vedel Touch of Europe. If you think good way, that's it. You have to. I had the option to cry in the corner and say, oh, pandemic is coming. No, you need to stand up and fight for it and have your eyes open, think outside of the box and do it.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derick Fage here, filling in for Rob. You'll have to excuse me for the distraction. I'm on Carol Ann Meehan's Twitter profile, and she has left her ward to visit the ward of Manotick Village, and she's actually taken some video footage of the trucks going through. And she writes, massive warehouses and trucks through Ottawa need serious solutions. The once quiet village of Manotick Village is now on a truck route. Take a listen. Do you want this in your community? It is pretty incredible. And Carol Ann is actually on the line. We're going to get to her in just a moment, but we have some people that have been waiting for a little while here. Let's head over to Irving in Orleans. Irving, what do you want to talk about today?
Okay, let's start off with the garbage.
All right, let's start there. I like it.
All the solutions cost money. Nobody thought about building an incinerator, which is cheaper in the long run. You don't have to build a big garbage hill. And as for saving anything,
right,
it's all going to the dump anyway.
Well, didn't we try incineration, and didn't we even fly to some councillors to Europe? I believe, if I remember correctly, we flew them to Europe on our tax dollar, and boy, oh boy, did they ever come up with some solutions on that, eh, Irving? That was money well spent.
Now, let's get to the roads.
Okay.
I heard that the mayor is going to put pintle hooks on all the buses so that the snow plows and the garbage trucks can tow them out of the potholes.
That's not, let's be honest, not a bad idea. And we were just listening to an environmental report saying that snowstorms are going to be the worst in 20 years. So I think we're going to need a little more than just pintle hooks to help us out of this mess. Irving, really appreciate the call. Thank you very much for calling in. Let's go to Paul in the Byward Market. And when it comes to city issues, I mean, I've actually received a couple of emails and Facebook posts about the situation in the Byward Market. Paul, what are your thoughts here on the city and how they're spending our tax dollars?
Well, I have a big question that's been an irk for me for a bit.
Okay.
And it's the objective of the pilot project for scooters.
Oh, David and I were talking about scooters earlier today. Yes, I'd love to hear what you have to say about the scooter program, Paul.
Well, with the stats that you gave out earlier in your show, I'd like to know how many complaints the city has had regarding scooters and or bicycles, for that matter.
Littered all over the place.
Right.
Right.
And infractions like being on the sidewalk, fast, kids on it, 2 people on it, blah, blah, blah.
No, I'd like to see that too, Paul. I'm going to see if they have any breakdown on that. I mean, the scooter situation is relatively new, so I don't know if they have that. But you know what?
Exactly,
I'll do my homework on that.
Because it's a pilot project. And they did instill some infraction bylaws. I'd like to know how many fines have been submitted.
Right. Okay.
Where's the feedback? How can I find the feedback? Because if it is a pilot project, there should be some back and forth.
Right.
And with whom?
You know what, Paul? I mean, I see some of the pros and cons here. Certainly, let's look at the pros is the idea of not having to bring the scooter like you do a bike to put into, to bring it back to a specific spot makes it a lot easier to use, right? I mean, you jump on it and you jump off it wherever the heck you want. It's kind of a crazy idea. So the con is now the city is littered with electric scooters all over the place.
Well, is this their idea of improving public transit because OC Transpo can't figure out what to do?
I don't think so. I think it's just another addition to public transit.
Well, let's clean it up if it's still in a pilot project mode.
Right. Paul, appreciate your call. I want to get to Carol Ann Meehan, City Councillor for Gloucester-South. Carol Ann, how are you today?
Good morning, Derick. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Good morning. So you took a trip out to Manotick Village, beautiful Manotick. I was talking about it earlier in the show. Lovely place, great place for a little day trip. People talking about these heavy construction vehicles going. I'm watching the video that you took. I mean, they're not kidding, right?
No, they're not kidding at all. And actually, the village of Manotick is just a bit south of my ward, Gloucester-South, Nepean, Derick, and that's why I was paying attention to what's happening in Manotick. Manotick is now on a truck route from the west end of the city through to the 417, the 416. We're getting another warehouse in North Gore, which is very close to Manotick.
Yeah.
We're about to probably approve another warehouse just north of Manotick in the South Maryville Business Park. So when you approve these warehouses, you're basically rubber stamping a whole heck of a lot of trucks going through your community. And I just illustrated with a video I took a couple weeks ago of what the village of Manotick is enduring. And it is not fun, let me tell you. So I'm using this as an example of what can happen elsewhere in the city. Unless we come to a solution, find a solution that will accommodate these trucks not going through communities. So that's basically what I did with this video. I want people to wake up and know that this is, I think, one of the biggest environmental issues we are going to be facing in the next little while in Ottawa. And we can prevent this if we wake up to it now.
Yeah, and you know what? I wonder if this is part of the issue that people have when it comes to development and putting in development without thinking of, the broader traffic issues that are going to come up. And is it an issue, too, where when they're putting in these big warehouses, are they ignoring the traffic issues that are going to happen? And the other question is, Carol Ann, how do we fix this in Manotick Village? Where can you divert this traffic to?
Well, Derek, let's face it, this is not just an issue in Manotick. This trucking issue is an issue right across the city. And everything is coming to a head right now. I call it like a perfect storm. Our infrastructure has not kept up. We're in a terrible infrastructure deficit in the city. We just don't have the money to put into roads, nor do we really want to put more money into bigger roads. But the fact of the matter is, e-commerce now is exploding, the way that we're buying. So that's why there's such a demand for these warehouses and the massive trucks that come with them. So what we've got is truck routes like Maryville Road, like Bridge Street in Manotick. These are considered trucking routes.
King Edward, right? It's been a complaint down. Yeah.
You know, I talked to one of my colleagues this morning, like Booth Street. The houses on Booth Street are being shaken by massive trucks going through communities. And so we don't really have a solution right now. And
So what is it? So Caroline, what is this? Do we need a ring road? Should we consider a truck tunnel? I mean, something has to be done.
Well, you know what happened to the idea of the truck tunnel, right? But yes, we do need a ring road. Otherwise, and I've talked to truckers, they are apt to always try to find the quickest route to go. And if they're sitting in traffic on Maryville Road, and it's guaranteed they will be sitting in traffic on Maryville Road and on Prince of Wales and on Bridge Street and on Booth Street and on King Edward, they are going to try to find the quickest way to get where they're going to go. And guess what? That's going to be going through communities. And I think this is unconscionable right now because we are seeing a proliferation of warehouses.
Well, and Caroline, who's going to pay for it? Because here's the frustration as a taxpayer and all of our listeners saying to themselves, okay, Ring Road is great. We're going to have to pay for that with some, special tax levy? Or do we start putting some of the onus on these corporations that are bringing in these huge warehouses because of e-commerce and say, hey, you know what? If you want to build in that area, you're going to help us build the infrastructure around it.
Absolutely. We have to demand that. But first what we have to do, Derek, is start talking about the seriousness of this issue. We're probably going to see this new warehouse in South Nepean in the South Maryville Business Park is going to be approved at Planning Committee in a couple of weeks. We don't have the infrastructure there. We got Fallowfield Road, Maryville Road, Prince of Wales, Woodruff. In a residential neighborhood, this is unacceptable. If we allow this to happen, we're going to put a problem in, and we don't have the solutions, okay? This is affecting our quality of life, pollution, our environment.
Safety.
But we have to start talking about it right now. And I'm calling for a moratorium on the approval of more warehouses until we figure out what the solution is going to be.
Interesting.
I think we have to start there, or the warehouses and Amazon-type warehouses, they have to be part of the solution and cough up a lot more money, actually, for infrastructure to accommodate, the tools of their trade.
Right.
We like commerce, but it's going to kill us.
Caroline, really appreciate you taking the time to call in this morning. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Derek.
All right, that's Caroline Meehan, City Councillor for Gloucester-South Gate. Listen, you should be fired up. This is the Talkback Hour, the 10 o'clock hour. It's your hour, 750-1310. We're asking you, the question is the City of Ottawa doing a good job spending your tax dollars? What are some of your biggest complaints? I'm going to get to some of your Facebook messages, by the way. There's many of them there. I apologize that we haven't gotten to them sooner, but I'll get to some of those after the break. Derick Fage here, filling in for Rob Snow on Rogers TV and City News.
news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, September 14th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 15 degrees, Smiths Falls, 17. And here's what's making news this hour. NDP taking aim at the big telecom companies in Canada. Leader Jagmeet Singh says the Liberals have failed in a promise to bring your cell bill down. He says electing that party will just be more of the same. Singh is concentrating his campaign today in Toronto. He would not say if he would prop up either Conservatives or Liberals in a minority situation, as the polls seem to indicate will happen. But he said his support would be for a government that makes wealthy Canadians and businesses pay more. Both the Liberal and Conservative leaders make their first appearance today at 11 o'clock. Justin Trudeau in BC. Aaron O'Toole is in Richmond. There are 577 more cases of COVID in Ontario today than yesterday. Positive cases come from over 21,100 tests, and the positivity rate is now at 2.3%. 7 more people have died from COVID in Ontario. Of these new cases, 26 are in Ottawa, 4 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, 3 in Eastern Ontario. There is 1 new case in Renfrew. Fall promises to bring spells of warm temperatures to most of Ontario, warmer than normal the rest of September and through October. That's according to the Weather Network chief meteorologist Chris Scott, forecasting above normal temperatures and a typical number of rainy days, not only in Ontario but across the country. Pre-holiday winter weather, though, not seen in the last 2 decades, is possible this year. City News Time, 10:34. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
All right, we're into the second half of the Talk Back Hour here on the Rob Snow Show. Derick Fage from Rogers TV filling in. We're asking you this morning, we're reaching out to you today, find out what your biggest complaints are about City of Ottawa services. So we're talking garbage and recycling pickup, public transit, road maintenance, other infrastructure, police services, parks, recreation, planning new community development, sidewalks, snow removal. Yeah, you get the idea. We've mentioned a couple of issues. Our number, 750-1310. I brought this up on my Facebook page, and many of you have reached out and shared some of your concerns and complaints when it comes to the City of Ottawa and how they're spending our tax dollars. As Sandra says, the roads in the city are terrible. City should have properly repaired the city streets before even starting with phase 2 for the train, for the LRT. Ida saying the allowance of supervising development, losing the affordability of a neighborhood, tearing down a single structure to build a condo with occupancy of 4 times original structure. That's some of her complaints. Dave comes in at infrastructure maintenance. These are his complaints. Infrastructure maintenance, roads absolutely, potholes uneven, bumpy, etc. I've even noticed that they seem to paint lines less frequently. Oh my God, in Vanier we had lines all over the road. It's I don't know what happened. There was a lot of jokes on the Vanier Facebook group about what it possibly could have happened. They had to come back and erase all the lines that they had painted on 2 roads, not just one, on 2 roads, and redo the entire thing. Often by spring, Dave says you can't see the lines at all. And then he finishes with, did amalgamation really work? I can answer that in one word, Dave. No, it did not. Elizabeth, her complaints, infrastructure. My street hasn't been paved in more than 20 years. It's crumbling apart, narrowing, and so many cracks and holes, yet we pay some of the highest taxes in Ottawa in our neighborhood. Terry, his complaints, roads, consistent bike plan. Oh my God, I mentioned that earlier. Bike lane or accommodation in the city is different. Accident waiting to happen. I couldn't agree more. You're biking along a bike lane and then it just disappears completely. I don't know what you expect us to do. My wife and I enjoying a nice casual bike ride, and then it ends. If there's nothing more dangerous than that, I don't know what. I got to go on a quick rant here. This battle between cyclists and drivers, can we please stop it? You know, and by the way, most cyclists own vehicles. I hope you realize that. They just happen to live closer, and they chose to live closer so that they could commute on their bike. We should be happy that they're doing it. They're still paying taxes, by the way. That's always the argument. Oh, the cyclists should have licenses and, pay like the rest of us. The majority of them still have cars. I hope you realize that. So let's stop bickering between each other. Let's just be kind to each other, share the road, and do a better job building our bloody bike lanes. My God. Terry goes on to say, better first responder support for mental health crisis. Police are not properly equipped for these situations, nor should they be. And finally, he says, louder, more wild, vivid shirts for the fantastic fill-in radio host. Thank you, Terry. That is very kind of you. I appreciate that. I choose my shirts very carefully each and every morning, and in particular because Terry asked for them.
It's a big part of what you do before the show.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a good half hour at home choosing my shirt. All right, let's go to a couple of calls before we go to a break. Let's go to Sharon in Ottawa, who wants to share her city gripes. Sharon, share it with me.
Actually, overall, I don't think the city manages itself well.
Okay.
Their priorities are totally skewed. Getting basic services anymore, snow removal, garbage pickup, that's a thing of the past. But there's a lot of special interest groups at City Hall and on council that want to spend massive amounts of money on other things that are all well and good once you've taken care of the basics.
Right, such as what, Sharon? Like what frustrates you when you see sort of, the financial report and where money is going? What frustrates you that we're wasting our money on?
Well, we're spending so much on, one example, public transit. Through this, I know there has to be public transit, and I would never assume to know how to run it.
Right.
I did run a business for almost 40 years, and I know your biggest expense in any business is your salary, like your wages and benefits.
Right.
And through this pandemic, OC Transpo specifically, but the city as well, really didn't lay anyone off. They didn't cut back in any way. I mean, driving around the city during the whole pandemic, big empty buses.
Right.
There might be one person on the bus.
And the difficult thing is you still have to cater to people that take public transit regardless of the numbers, right? I mean, you can't just leave them they still have to pick up groceries too, right?
And I totally agree with that, but there's got to be ways. I mean, every other business, the word through the pandemic was pivoted. Every other business pivoted to accommodate their customers or their,
They did as much as possible. Sharon, appreciate your call. I want to get to a few more calls. Thank you so much for calling in. Again, 750-1310. Let's go to Richard in Ottawa, wants to talk about, he's a trucker, wants to respond to the truck issue. Thanks so much for calling in, Richard. Appreciate it.
Oh, anytime. I just want to respond, right? I've been trucking for over 10 years.
Yeah.
Right? I've done long haul all over U.S., working local.
Okay.
COVID, how to pivot, like the last caller said.
Yep.
We're not driving in these communities because it's fun.
Oh, listen, I don't think anyone's putting the onus on truckers, Richard.
Yeah, but the thing is like one thing they do in the U.S. and they just get it better. They just think of these things better than we do.
Okay.
It's a zoning issue. If you put the commercial areas and you zone these warehouses all to be located together, let's just say somewhere random off the 416, halfway between the 401 and the 417, you put a 4-lane road in there, you put a community, you know what I mean? Just this is where the warehouses are.
Right.
You take the big 53 footers. All right, with the sleeper cabs and all the noise and everything it brings, you bring it out of what Caroline Meehan's bringing up. All right, this is a zoning issue. All right, so she has the perfect job to address everything that she's complaining. But the fact of the matter is that they want to prove these zones. There's a warehouse over here. There's a warehouse over there. They're scattered all over the place, like you're sprinkling salt on a steak.
No, you're
you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right, Richard.
One place, and drop a 4-lane road in, let us come in and out and do what we need to do. We don't want to be in these communities any more than you want us to.
Right.
It's stressful.
It's a planning, it's an overall planning issue, and we've done such a horrible job, and not only just this, I mean planning even developments in communities. There's, I live in a community with 0 sidewalks, and then the city encourages us to get out and enjoy your community and be active and go for a walk and meet your neighbor. I don't even have a bloody sidewalk to walk on.
Yeah, no, and you know what I mean. And then you want to, and then they drop in an Amazon warehouse just behind you. Yeah. And you wonder why there's 25 semis going down it every hour. Well, it's clean. It's simple as day.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, all right, stop buying things. That's a trucker motto. If you don't like trucks, stop buying stuff.
Richard, I really
won't be there.
I really appreciate you calling in and getting your perspective, and I can understand the frustration for truckers who think some of the onus is on them, or that people are looking at them in a negative way, and you're not doing any of the planning. So thanks so much for your call, Richard.
And look at it just before you let me go. Just look at it this way, right?
Right.
There's no truck stops in Ottawa. There's nowhere for us to sleep. There's nowhere for us to shower.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Great point.
There's a tiny little fuel island which we smash up just off Innis and the 417. Right?
Yeah.
You want to buy stuff. You want everything a truck provides to a community, but you don't want to appreciate the driver that does it for you.
Yeah, agreed.
That's my point.
Richard, great point.
My point.
Yeah.
All right, figure out your zoning before you blame a truck driver. That's all I'd say.
Yeah, thanks so much for your call, Richard. Really appreciate it. Just heading over to Facebook again, Kevin says, I know this is probably petty in the grand scheme of things, but the city isn't great at ensuring street sweepers go through an entire neighborhood in the spring to clean up the salt, sand, stone residue, and so forth from winter maintenance. They did the main road through our community after the snow melted, but did our street while there were still snowbanks, and as a result, there are still random piles of sand and stone, especially around the community mailbox and sewers. Heather saying Centertown streets are filthy, construction is insane. It goes on and on. But let's take, you know what? We're going to read one more here, and then we're going to take a break because our lines are now lighting up like crazy. Edith says, trying to get a new green bin is nearly impossible. I've been calling for almost a year, which I'm shocked. Actually, Edith, my wife and I, we called and got a new green bin the next day. Same, it was our blue bin recently. And that's another issue some people are bringing up is the fact, when they empty your blue box and your black box, it's almost like they throw it down in anger so that they can break them. But we got both of ours the next day, so I feel terrible for you that it's been almost a year. That's ridiculous. Edith also says, tried to sign up my son for daycare on the City of Ottawa website is confusing. She says, I keep trying to remove my abusive ex from my water bill with them, and they refuse because they need his consent. I've been paying the bill late for nearly 3 years because I only get notice when it's past due since he changed the settings to paperless and I don't have access to the account. Lawrence says, the garbage man put my big black bins in my neighbor's driveway, not even close to where they were last night. And that really grinds my gears. Very good, Lawrence. I know where you're coming from there. All right. So our lines are lit up here. I'm going to take a quick break, and we'll be back talking city issues. This is Derick Fage filling in for Rob Snow on The Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
Ottawa Markets was created by the City of Ottawa to help rejuvenate the outdoor markets program in Byward and Wellington West, where we have the Parkdale Market. And so we set to work on bringing in the right team with the right experience and reaching out to local vendors and local farmers, because we knew when we did a survey of our customers that was the one thing that was really important to them, both at Byward and in Parkdale, is to start bringing back that local product. And that's what you can see behind us here at the York Street Farmers Market. We put in place a Farmers First policy, which means that we will deal with farmers from the region first. And we're going to give them priority in terms of placement. They're going to have reduced fees in coming to the market. We've also made it free for any farm that's been in operation for under 2 years. The market also put in place a BIPOC initiative, which is a Black, Indigenous, and Peoples of Color initiative, which provides grants and support opportunities for folks from those communities to come on out to the market to reduce systemic barriers that have existed. As a farmer's market, we can have a variety of vendors here, from an artisan to a microprocessor who's taking local ingredients and putting them into a product in a kitchen and selling that, to breweries and distilleries this year, which were changes that the province put in place, which allowed us to bring in a few of those vendors as well, which I think is a nice surprise for people sometimes at 9 in the morning after a pandemic. But it's been going really well, and some of the breweries have been pretty appreciative, because for them, whether it just be doing delivery or curbside pickup, it gives them an opportunity to come back out and talk with their customer and talk about what makes their product so special. Throughout the market, the health and safety protocols that you're going to see, masks are still required. That is obviously the case, and you'll see a number of signs noting that around the area. We've got a number of hand sanitizer units, I call them droids, throughout the area that you can sort of just grab a pump or a squeeze wherever you go. But what we've also had to do is reduce the number of vendor spaces we have in the market by 50%. This ensures that we can guarantee that our vendors are going to have that distance, that we can, have a little bit better flow around the market. But what we also did was, as I said, we created the York Street Farmers Market, which is just microprocessors and local producers only, and that's on Saturdays. In Parkdale, we launched the night market, which is bringing a lot of the same content, but in the evening, and residents are sort of spilling out into the park. So we're looking at what we're doing as trying to support, create, and enhance public space for the residents of the city. It's been great. The community, which is what this market is here for, and then as tourism comes back, obviously we'll welcome all visitors. But the response has been really great. The community's come on out, they're speaking with their wallets and their dollars, which obviously at the end of the day, we want a great experience, but it needs to be a valuable economic opportunity for the vendors who are coming out.
Bridge Street not be a truck route, and that all of these trucks use the Vimy Memorial Bridge instead, which is obviously less convenient, or they would be using Vimy Memorial Bridge, I would imagine. Further, majority of these trucks are not e-commerce related. Yes, that's right. I mean, the majority of these are construction vehicles going to that development in Barrhaven. If Scott happens to be listening to the show, we did talk a little bit about e-commerce, not necessarily talking specifically about Manotick, but we had a truck driver on just saying, with e-commerce, and Carol Ann pointing out that, yes, beyond this, we do have major warehouses that are being built, and it is going to mean more trucks going through our communities as these warehouses are built closer to communities, right? I wanted to throw that out there. All right, let's get to some more calls. Let's head over to John in Russell, who wants to talk about his city gripes. John, what are your thoughts on this? How do you think the city's spending your money?
Years ago, when they built the Corral Center, they had Bryden's group pay for the overpass to get to the Corral Center.
Yeah, that was unprecedented.
So I'm out in the East End, and we have the mega Amazon warehouse there, and tons of traffic coming off the highway, and it slows everybody's commute down.
Right.
They're also pushing a mega dump to be just down the road from there. So if they're going to have these major things built, they should have the infrastructure. They should have their own off-ramp, very similar to what they did with the Corral Center years ago.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad idea, John. I mean, if we're going
from it, not us. It's the Amazon and the dump people, right? So
yeah, I think the issue that municipalities have, that provinces have, that even countries have is to encourage businesses like Amazon to come and build here. We can't do that, or they won't want to build here, so instead we're going to give them a tax break as an incentive to build their large warehouse in one of our communities, right? I mean, that's part of the problem. John, thanks very much for your call. Really appreciate it. By the way, when it comes to garbage waste, there was a great article. There was a great response in the Ottawa Sun. So in today's Ottawa Sun, I wanted to share this letter to the editor with you. This is from Ottawa resident Mike Alain. This is what he had to say, and I thought it was really well written, as a matter of fact. He says, the feeble thinking and rationale given to the current City of Ottawa garbage survey illustrates once again the dearth of intellectual innovation City Council and staff exhibit. They proclaim this survey will lead to the best solution for dealing with Ottawa's garbage woes in the future. In fact, given the limited options from which to choose, all it will lead to is the most popular choice among respondents from an incomplete and inadequate range of solutions. Why is the focus solely on changing collection criteria? It should cover the entire waste management operation, including ultimate disposal methods. Instead, it only centers on collecting less with no focus on dealing with that volume, whatever it happens to be. For example, why is it that other cities can incinerate waste and generate power and heat, yet Ottawa cannot? Gee, Mike, so many of us are thinking the same thing. Thanks for putting it so well. And the failed Plasco, remember that? The Plasco demonstration from a few years back is insufficient reason to not reconsider this option with better management and leadership. Why the heck did we send city councillors to Europe to come up with ideas on how we can incinerate our garbage and not even use the idea? Like, sometimes we just want to reinvent the wheel in this city, and I will even say this country, Phoenix system. Let's just rebuild it all from scratch instead of using what works. I mean, are we insane? Because that way we can say, well, it was our idea. That was a great idea. It was our idea. You know, we came up with the idea. We went to Europe and, we got some advice, got some ideas. But at the end of the day, we knew better, right? Mike ends with, Ottawans truly get the garbage they deserve, constantly re-electing what is mostly a band of uninspiring plotters. Too bad they negate the efforts of the few innovative, progressive councillors. You tell him, Mike. You tell him, buddy. That is from Mike Alain. That's from the Ottawa Sun today. One of the letters to the editor in the Ottawa Sun, which I thought was great. And he brings up, I mean, the proposal. This is what we had to choose from, by the way. Okay. A few weeks ago, they sent out this survey to collect feedback on new ideas around garbage collection with 3 options to help reduce waste. Okay. And the onus, of course, is all on us. Right, as individuals, like we're doing something wrong. We can't. We've got 15 years left of the garbage dump. We need a solution today. Like 15 years is not a long time. It's like tomorrow in this. Okay, here, partial pay as you throw. So households would be allowed to place a set number of garbage items out for collection. Households with more than this limit would purchase garbage tags for additional items. That's one. Reduced item limits. Households would set out a reduced number of garbage bags for collection. Anything above the limit would not be collected. Oh, that's a good idea. Then people can drive their garbage into the middle of nowhere and throw it in a field because that's what's going to happen. Clear garbage bags with recycling and organics bans. Households would set out their garbage in clear bags. Recyclables and organic waste would not be permitted in the garbage. So you'd have like Inspector Clouseau checking our garbage every time you put it out. Okay, let's go to a few calls as we go to wrap up this episode of the Talk Back Hour. Let's go to Dave in Lower Town. Dave, what do you think about the city, how they're spending their money?
Well, it's terrible, of course. I just want to get on the thing with OC Transpo, but I just want to point out anything, any idea, any plan in Ottawa, if you boil it all down, it's a make-work project to keep city employees with jobs.
Okay.
And that's all it comes down to me. I look at OC Transpo, as you were speaking with a caller earlier, we do need to maintain service. But was there any reason why they couldn't do maybe a once-an-hour service and people could find it when the bus came and go do their groceries?
Yeah, I mean, Dave, we're in the middle of a lockdown. It's not like you need buses every 15 minutes during a lockdown.
Well, exactly. And the thing is, what they did, not only that, but they kept everything running. They kept all the high-maintenance buses running, probably the double-deckers and everything. They spent money hand over fist when they didn't need to.
Right.
And not only that, but they didn't even make an effort to change and alter their timing schedules, length of route schedules. I mean, I'm a person that takes the bus, and still to this day, I take a bus from downtown, and every 4 to 5 stops, you have a 5-minute layup because the bus is early, because there's no traffic, and because there's nobody getting on and off the bus.
Dave, I'm going to let you go quickly because I want to just to get to a couple of quick calls here. Let's head over to Steve in Ottawa. Steve, quickly, as just running out of time in this segment.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, man.
2 things. About the Carleton Meehan call there, no one wants to be driving through Manitic. Right now, River Road's under construction. And as I'm doing the LRT in Riverside South, what do you think? Was going to fall out of the sky? The other thing about a roundabout road, the 15 in Quebec is a roundabout road. They just got to build a bridge in Elmer to Canada and Gatineau to Orleans.
There you go. Steve has solutions. That's what I love about this part of the Rob Snow Show.
If I work in Elmer, I can keep my work in Canada, but I have to drive all the way downtown to get there.
Yeah. Okay, I got to let you go, Steve. Want to get to David here in Barrhaven. David, quickly, what's your biggest gripe?
Yeah, I just the anniversary 1 year now since I notified the city about what I consider a safety hazard on Fallowfield Road at the train crossing. Big gap in the. It's really bad for an old biker like me. I've been motorcycling since I was 16, and I'm scared stiff whenever I go past there. Big gap between the track bed and the roadway.
Right.
I told them a year ago. They told me, yeah, we know about that. We're looking into it, and it hasn't been touched.
Yeah, no return phone call. David, I really appreciate it. You're not the only one who gets that kind of service every once in a while. Thanks to everyone for calling in. Thanks to everybody on my Facebook page for chiming in. Really appreciate it. I didn't get to everybody. Perhaps this is something we're going to talk about tomorrow. Who knows? It could bleed over into tomorrow. People are really interested in this subject. There's a lot. And you know what? Maybe we can throw in some positive things as well. Who am I kidding? No, I'm not kidding. We could throw in a couple of positive things. You know, we do some things well in this city, right? We're one of the best cities in the world. So let's keep that in mind for tomorrow. Maybe we could come up with, some good and some bad. The good, the bad, the ugly when it comes to the city of Ottawa, how they're spending our tax dollars. Coming up after the break, we're going to turn our attention to the federal election. This is Derick Fage filling in for Rob on City News and Rogers TV.
news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, September 14th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 15 degrees. It's 17 in Smith Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. One city councillor in Ottawa decided to do something about an increase in truck traffic through a neighbouring community to her ward. Carol Meehan represents Gloucester-South Nepean and took a video camera to Manotick recently to capture the number of trucks passing through the village. She tells City News with one and likely more big warehouses in that general area, truck traffic is only going to increase as it is right around the city. She feels the increase in truck traffic should serve as a warning.
I'm using this as an example of what can happen elsewhere in the city. Unless we come to a solution, find a solution that will accommodate these trucks not going through communities.
Now, Meehan calls this one of the biggest environmental issues facing Ottawa, which can be prevented if solutions are found now. One solution, she feels, is the long-talked-about ring road in Ottawa. City News Time, 11:02. There are 577 new cases of COVID in the province today from just over 21,100 tests. That positive rate is at 2.3% now. 7 more people in Ontario have died from COVID in the past day. Of the new cases, 26 are in Ottawa, 4 are in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, 3 in Eastern Ontario. There is 1 new case in Renfrew. City News Time, 11:03. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
The clouds will increase. We'll get into some showers late this afternoon, but most of the activity was storms and showers after midnight. Some of these storms could bring very strong wind overnight. The high 22 degrees today will feel like 27, 17 for the low. Tomorrow, some early morning showers or thunderstorms with a high 21. For today, the high 22.
And right now, 15 degrees in Ottawa, 17 degrees in Smiths Falls. The latest 3 polls in this federal election puts the Liberals and Conservatives in a dead heat, indicating the prospect of another minority government. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is not saying whether he would prop up either one of those parties in a minority. But at a campaign stop in Toronto this morning, Singh indicated he would support a government that makes wealthy Canadians and businesses pay higher taxes.
Our measures around closing the loopholes, ending offshore tax havens, making the multimillionaires and billionaires pay their fair share, making sure we have web giants like Amazon that actually contribute fairly. While they make profits here, they pay virtually no taxes here. So we're going to make sure that they pay their fair share. That's one of the most important things we can do.
Now, Singh was in Toronto highlighting the New Democrat proposal to cap your cell phone and internet bills. Now, both the Liberal and Conservative leaders making their first appearance today, right about now. Justin Trudeau in BC, Erin O'Toole in our region in Richmond. Concerns linked to the pandemic are high on the list of issues for the Ottawa business people heading into the home stretch of this federal campaign. Here's City News reporter Chris Curries.
In a survey done in collaboration with Leger and the Canadian Global Cities Council, the CEO of the Ottawa Board of Trade tells City News the top issue was the cost of living.
In general terms, I would say that affordability came out very high in the survey as being important to both the general public and to the business community.
That with 41% support, but a more pressing issue for those between the ages of 18 to 34. Sueling Ching says that's followed by the environment at 39% and the economic recovery from COVID-19 at 34%. She adds that the local results do support the provincial and federal priorities. Chris Curries, City News.
City News Time, 11:05. And breaking news from the Ontario court. Linda O'Leary found not guilty of careless operation of a vessel in a boat crash that killed 2 years ago. O'Leary is the wife of celebrity businessman Kevin O'Leary and was charged under the Canada Shipping Act. 2 people died after a collision one evening on a boat being driven by Linda O'Leary. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
I'd say he's all talk and no action, but this is worse. A person so blinded by his own ambition that he can't see the rot in his own party. A man who is not a feminist, not an environmentalist, not a public servant. A man who's focused solely and squarely on himself.
The mobs of anti-vaxxers who are harassing doctors and nurses, waiters and business owners. Do you know what he just said to them? That there's room for them in his big tent party. That's who he's chosen. That's the path he wants to take. And it just isn't right.
Oh boy, things are getting ugly in this 44th election. My goodness. Gloves are off. That was Aaron O'Toole off the top there. And of course, Justin Trudeau exchanging barbs. Justin, for his part, I think he's, that Sunday rally in Oakville, that really, to me, was the narrative he's now going to go with. I mean, he really started with the attacks. Aaron O'Toole had been fairly quiet up to that point as far as attacks go from himself personally. Listen, they've had their ads and so forth, attack ads, and I'm not saying that he hasn't, but I found he's been fairly calm in his demeanor. He hasn't said too much, but now it looks like anything goes. Here to break down more of it, Michael Taube, columnist with Troy Media and Loonie Politics, former speechwriter for Stephen Harper, joining us again as he does each and every week. Michael, how are you today?
I'm good, Derick. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. In John Iveson today in the National Post, he talked about the mudslinging. Of course, we know that he's not on Team Trudeau. However, we're starting to see this coming from all sides now. Can we expect this to get worse in the next 6 days?
I would imagine so. I think what John Iveson has identified is correct. And this is unfortunately very common now with modern politics.
Yeah.
You see this type of lashing out. I mean, it's not unique to Canada. It happens in the United States. It happens in the UK, Germany, France. It happens throughout Asia, Africa, and you name it, it's there. This is unfortunately the way modern politics operates. And to come out for people and say this is horrifying, awful, and all that, it is. But unfortunately, it's also reality. It's the way the game is fought, especially now when the election is so close. And, as your newscaster said right off the top of the hour, and I'm seeing the same thing, and others are too, the polls have really tightened. Now, polls have to be taken with a grain of salt, and they're not always an indicator of who's going to win the next election. But if you look at a lot of them, including things that are happening more recently, say, with Nanos research, the numbers are literally dead even. So when Abacus and Leger and others sort of call it dead even, and others have these wild disparities because the Conservatives and Liberals are leading both, large polls, small polls, medium-sized polls. It's all over the map. So for that reason, the type of vitriol that we're now seeing or is more commonly seeing on the last few days of the campaign, you can see more of it up until Election Day.
Yeah, and I'm certainly as a citizen, I get frustrated when I see it, but it obviously works. They have advisors around them. We concentrate a lot on the people themselves, but the people that they've surrounded themselves with have obviously told them that this is the message that's going to work, right, Michael?
Correct. And look, obviously a lot of these things are actually gamed out in focus groups well beforehand, where they actually try to figure out what sort of ideas, concepts, language, behavior, etc. might be acceptable during this period of time. Plus, they also use historical models. So they go back to other elections, they try to see what did work, what didn't work, and then utilize those functionalities. So it's not very uncommon. And whether people like it or not, and look, I don't enjoy it. I don't think most people enjoy it, but I accept it as being part of the process. And I think we all have to. It now just sort of comes down to the very basic issue, Derick, is are you going to believe some of the language? Do you recognize that some of the language is just part of the process and that's the way it's going to be during elections? And are you able to disseminate what is fact and what is fiction?
Right.
That's a key that everybody on their own, on their own parts has to do. It can't be spoon-fed to you.
Michael, my opinion is I think this actually favors Justin Trudeau because I think he has more issues to attack. When it comes to guns and abortion, when it comes to economic recovery, because he's been going through it, because he's been putting programs in place. When it comes to anti-vaxxers and the mobs, as he described, he just seems to have more in his arsenal. I wonder what you think.
No, I don't.
Okay.
And that has nothing to do with partisanship. I think when anyone comes lashing out, much like Justin Trudeau did during his Global News interview, where he was basically admonishing the person who was asking him questions because they weren't the right questions or the ones he felt should be asked. I mean, what nerve does he have to say that? Any political leader, if they did that, it would look ridiculous from the left or from the right. I mean, yes, obviously Justin Trudeau has been using more vicious language and using more vicious symbolism during the campaign, but that's not unusual. The Liberals have been doing this for several elections when they call the Conservatives, things like, and I've said this before on this show and others, extreme, out of touch, hiding a so-called hidden agenda, which doesn't exist, Derick. I wish it did, because I'd like to know about it myself.
Yeah, well, it obviously resonates, right?
It does. It resonates because it allows people to push, the narrative in one direction and then make them, in this case, the Liberals and Justin Trudeau, the sunny ways, the optimistic party and all that, when really they're deep down in the trenches as much as anybody else, throwing mud and mudslinging as much as any other party does. Again, I'm not to be a broken record. It's unfortunate that the process is like this, but no, it does not give an advantage to Justin Trudeau, Aaron O'Toole, Jagmeet Singh, anyone. No one benefits from this. It's just a question of who can use it better to their advantage, because unfortunately, that's what tends to happen.
Yeah. Mike, I want to have a little fun with you and talk a little predictions here, what the result of the election is going to be. So David, our fabulous producer here, says it's going to be a Liberal minority with 5 to 10 seats lost in Quebec and BC. I am saying also a Liberal minority, but more like 3 to 5 seats lost in Quebec and Atlantic Canada. What's your prediction?
Well, I'm going to say that actually this one is much tougher than others because the margin of error in polling and in the determination of the way people are thinking, this is actually a tough one to call. And when people come out and say it and say that, well, it's relatively easy based on the tea leaves being X, I can argue and others can argue, well, the tea leaves also resemble Y. And let's use one poll before I come out with a prediction. I'm going to show you how this might come out and how this might work. Okay. Again, polls, grain of salt, don't always have to believe them, but something odd is happening here. If you look at Nanos Research, which does a rolling average, which means that daily they have out telephone calls, they see what people are thinking, and they record it, we have seen after basically August 31st to September 9th, the Conservatives were in the lead by anywhere from 1 to 5 points. Then as of September 10th, the Liberals suddenly jumped from being about 2 points down to about, I believe it was 4.1% above, which is an enormous gap that was covered during a 4-day period. But here's what's interesting. Every single day since that time, yes, the Liberals are in the lead. The gap is now down to, according to today, September 13th, 1.1%. So it's been dropping an average of 1% every single day. That's not exactly what's happened each day, but that's the average.
Right.
Which means that we are in a dead heat, which means that opinion polls and the popularity of the parties may not necessarily determine what happens on September 20th. Much like 2019, Andrew Scheer won the popular vote by a 34.34 to 33.12% margin over Justin Trudeau. But as we know, Justin Trudeau formed a minority government with 157 seats to 121. So it all comes down to seat impact, where voters are, where the concentration is, how you do in the regions. And because of what I'm now sort of seeing, I believe it will be a Tory minority by the
really
margin.
Okay.
Now, that's what I'm seeing now. But regardless of who wins, because a Liberal minority is certainly possible too, there will be no majority government. So anyone who's hoping for that, put your chips elsewhere. It's not going to happen.
Right.
And B, expect to be back at the polls in 2 years or less.
Oh, my God, Michael.
That's 1,000%, unfortunately.
Michael, I think you're 100%, 1,000%, as you said, correct, and it's going to be so incredibly frustrating. Michael, always a pleasure listening to you. Rob will be back next week, so I'm really, really interested to hear your response to what happens. Hopefully we've got a count by then. It's possible that the counting continues in, but I think, by probably Tuesday morning, early Tuesday morning, we'll have a good idea. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you next week when Rob is back. Michael, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it, Derick. Have a good week.
Thanks, you too. That's Michael Taube, columnist with Troy Media and Loonie Politics, and former speechwriter for Stephen Harper. Coming up after the break, they are the most exciting team in baseball. They're also the hottest team in baseball. Arash Madani, Sportsnet Blue Jays reporter, joining us after the break to talk all things Blue Jays. This is Derick Fage filling in for Rob Snow here on Rogers TV and City News.
So the birth of absinthe was 2002, I think, 2003, and I was working at Urban Bistro, happily, where Allium is now. And then the space where Holland Cafe was came up. It's on the corner of Spencer and Holland. And I spoke to the landlord, and there's a lot of interest from a lot of other people, but he and I just, got along super well, and he put a lot of faith in me. So Carmen Turner is his name. He gave me the lease to the place and really pretty much gave me all the equipment in the place. So I was really lucky. I've been really lucky with landlords that way, actually, both my current landlord and Carmen Turner. Because if there hadn't been Carmen Turner, there wouldn't have been absinthe. So we were there for a few years and just sort of outgrew the place. And then now we're here. It's obviously been tough, and it's been tough for everyone. I mean, that's the been the big democratic sweep of in restaurants and the hospitality and the arts that we were talking about earlier. It's like everybody's been impacted pretty much the same. From everybody that I talked to, we're down 80%. We're climbing out now. I think one of the saddest things is we went down to 2 employees from 25. And we're now at 4, and we're bringing 2 new people on this week, so we'll be at 6. So it's little steps. So it's been tough. It's I've got the most expensive clubhouse ever here, because some days you come and you don't do any business, but you're here. But I'm grateful for what I do have. I think everybody's optimistic now, not necessarily just about the vaccine, but about the vaccine, spring, being able to be outside. I think you're going to see a lot of pop-up things happen in parking lots and on sidewalks and like that, rather than being actually inside somebody's commerce. I think we'd like to take it outside. I know my staff would. My staff like the outdoors now, all of a sudden, all 4 of us. 6 soon. We'll be doing some business in the patio in the parking lot, and we have a patio out front. And I think I hope other restaurants and stores will do the same. I hope that they take advantage of the sidewalk and doing sort of, guerrilla marketing and stuff like that, and really shaking it up a bit. You can find us at Absinthe Cafe at 1208 Wellington Street West in Hintonburg. And you can find us online at absinthecafe.ca.
Air.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Oh boy, we're going to have some fun in this next segment. Derick Fage here filling in for Rob Snow right here on City News and Rogers TV. Why are we going to have some fun? Because those Toronto Blue Jays, all right, not only the hottest team in baseball, but the most exciting team in Major League Baseball to watch. I mean, if you're not on this band, and by the way, we talk about, are they going to make, these are the playoffs right now. The Toronto Blue Jays from now until the end of the season are basically in the playoffs. And if you thought to yourself, I'm not a big baseball fan, I don't know, tune in and watch this team. They are so exciting to watch. Jump on the bandwagon if you're not a fan. And if you are a fan, you've been having an amazing time watching this run. We are joined today by Arash Madani, Sportsnet Blue Jays reporter. Arash, how are you?
Derick, it has been a hot minute, my man.
It sure has. I should say both Arash and I started our careers at Rogers TV here in Ottawa.
That's right.
And look at us now, living the dream, Arash.
Exactly.
I call this team the most exciting team in baseball, Arash, and it's not even just a biased take. I mean, the national media and the media in the United States are all saying the same thing.
I tell you what, Derick, it's so beyond belief what we're watching, because I think back to 2.5 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
It was a Friday night in Detroit, and it was a tie game 1-1, and Josh Palacios, really a minor league center fielder who was up because of George Springer's injury.
Right.
Anyway, Palacios misplays a ball in center field. The Tigers win on an inside the park home run. And it almost felt right then, when the Jays dropped to 6.5 out of a wild card and 3 teams ahead of them, I thought to myself, okay, well, time of death, 10:27 p.m. on this 2021 season on this Friday night in Michigan.
Yeah, the wheels have fallen off. We don't have a hope in hell. And then what happened?
Since they have won 15 of 17 ball games.
Crazy.
Surpassed those 3 teams ahead of them and are in sole possession of a wild card.
Unbelievable. I mean, the streak is unbelievable, and they have done it in entertaining fashion, right? I mean, let's start off with the weekend versus Baltimore, and how many franchise records that they had just in that matchup with Baltimore. It was incredible, Arash.
Yeah, it was. And look, Vlad's putting on a performance for the ages. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., son of a Hall of Famer, who at the age of 22 has already surpassed the most home runs his father ever had in a season. But there have been a couple of moments along the way, Derick, that really stand out.
Okay.
One was even before that Baltimore series. It was the Friday night of Labor Day weekend, and they're down 8-2 to Oakland, and you're saying to yourself, okay, well, that's it, again. And then then Teoscar Hernandez hits a home run, and then Lourdes Gurriel hits a grand slam, and then Marcus Semien hits a 3-run walk-off home run, and you're like, wait a minute. And then even in Baltimore, they're down a bunch of runs, and they make a comeback to get within 1 or 2 runs, and George Springer hobbles to the plate with a bad knee, and it's a 3-run homer to win it. And you're saying to yourself, what are we watching right now? It's been a great story.
Well, and then let's fast forward to last night. Okay, we've been on this incredible run, and now we're going up against the Tampa Bay Rays, who I don't think have the star power of the Blue Jays, but very consistent team, right? They seem to have consistency in all facets of their game. And you're going into it and say, maybe this could be it. We're going up against a pretty tough team, and another incredible performance, not just by the hitters, but the pitching was stand out last night.
Yeah, and that's the one calling card over these last 2.5 weeks. The bats have been outstanding; they've been electric. But Alek Manoah, as a rookie, is rewriting rookie records for this team. Robbie Ray, out of nowhere, is an AL Cy Young Award candidate.
Yeah.
Jose Berrios, who they gave a lot up for to get him at the trade deadline, has turned into a front-of-the-line starting pitcher. They have 3
real front-of-the-line starting pitchers right now. And somehow Steven Matz has turned into a capable fifth starter. It's funny, Derick, the guy they're paying the most, Hyunjin Ryu, is probably the number 4 starter in this rotation right now.
Hard to believe. And at the beginning of the season, I think we all thought that was probably, the biggest issue for them coming into the season was pitching, right? And it's completely turned around.
Absolutely.
You mentioned Manoah, by the way. I should mention to people that, reached 100 career strikeouts quicker than any pitcher in Blue Jays history.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And Robbie Ray has had more strikeouts than any left-hander in franchise history. And the biggest thing, though, Derick, is that for the months of May and June, the bullpen was imploding all over the place.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
And finally, their relievers are getting it together. You're no longer holding your breath when that bullpen door opens, and that's a huge part of this.
Arash, what about the rest of the schedule? Is it a difficult schedule in your opinion, or is it a favorable schedule? How do you look at it?
Well, I look at this, Derick, is that October baseball is amazing. Playoffs and every pitch matters, and there's so much spotlight and pressure and intensity. But I think a playoff race in September, meaningful September baseball, is what it's all about, because you're not just following your team, you're following everybody else who's in the race. Blue Jay fans are watching what the Red Sox are doing, what the Yankees are doing, what the Mariners are doing, and you're spending as much time watching the other teams as your own team, and what about who's going to start here? The Blue Jays have an off day on Thursday, and suddenly you're saying to yourself, okay, well, if they get into the wild card on October 4th, how may they manipulate Thursday's off day to make sure Robbie Ray gets the start in that wild card game? So there are so many different puzzle pieces to all of this. They have Minnesota twice. The Twins are dreadful. They have Baltimore again, but they're in the midst of a series with the Rays now, the division leaders. They go to Tampa next Monday to Wednesday, and they have one more season with the Yankees, who feel like they're in a free fall.
Right.
So, hey, it's September baseball.
Looking pretty good. It's going to be a fun October. Arash, so nice to hear from you again. Really appreciate you spending time with me.
Anytime, dude.
All right, take care. That's Arash Madani from Sportsnet Blue Jays reporter, and reports on everything. I mean, what an incredible career Arash has had. He has covered almost every major sport you could possibly imagine, and championships over the years, and just a great guy and great at what he does. We're going to talk about the pandemic coming up after the break. A school in Cornwall has closed due to a single COVID-19 case. Dr. Paul coming up after the break to talk about that. This is Derick Fage filling in for Rob Snow here on Rogers TV and City News.
Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This is Tuesday, the 14th of September. Good morning, I'm Jason White. Right now in Ottawa, partly cloudy, 18 degrees. It's 19 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news this hour. Breaking news from Central Ontario, where a court has found Linda O'Leary not guilty in a boat crash that killed 2 people 2 years ago. O'Leary, the wife of celebrity businessman Kevin O'Leary, had been charged with careless operation of a vessel. Linda O'Leary was at the helm of the boat when it crashed into another, killing 2 and injuring 3 other people. Stay with City News for the latest on this developing story. A lower number of new COVID-19 cases in Ontario today, 577. 7 more people have died. The province says Ottawa has 26 new cases today, with 4 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. The province reporting the Eastern Ontario Health Unit has 3 new cases, with 1 in Renfrew County. Updated local numbers will come this afternoon. One Ottawa City Councillor is frustrated with the amount of truck traffic passing through Manotick. Gloucester-South Nepean Councillor Meehan says the truck traffic through the village will only increase if more big warehouses come to the area. She thinks the long talked about ring road around South Ottawa could be a solution. This coming fall looks warmer than normal for the most part, but with a sudden switch to winter-like weather. The Weather Network is out with its fall forecast predicting above normal temperatures, but with an earlier start to winter-like weather than we're used to in Ontario and Quebec. City News Time 11:32. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News. 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Rob is off all week long. Derick Fage here from Rogers TV, filling in for Rob. In the news, you may have heard, the school in Cornwall has closed due to a single COVID-19 case. To find out what happened with this school in Cornwall and to explain how the isolation protocol works, and of course many more questions for him, Dr. Paul, Medical Officer of Health for the Eastern Ontario Health Unit, joining us. Dr. Paul, how are you today?
I'm well, I'm doing very well. Busy with this school, but
I can imagine. Yeah, no kidding. So let's talk about this case. Sure. What happened with this school in Cornwall?
Sure. Well, first of all, I want to just say that the school is open today.
Okay.
We closed it for one day.
Yeah.
We had a positive case reported in the school, and this happened over the weekend. And typically with these types of investigations, we need to look at, okay, where did this individual, what class was this individual in? Who did this person contact? Other people, and so on. And so it was based on our investigation, there were multiple people that this individual could have contacted, and then those individuals could have been in contact with multiple classes. And so we did not have time to really identify who truly was at risk, who needed to be tested, who needed to be isolated. Okay. And so I spoke with the school board director, on Sunday, saying that, look, we're not sure at this point, we're not able to identify exactly which child should be tested, which child should be isolated. And because we weren't sure, and school would be starting the next day, we didn't want to have kids come in, that would need to be isolated otherwise. And so this is a routine practice that we do, particularly when there's multiple probable cases and multiple more complicated cases running, in the schools or even in businesses and so on. So what we did is we said, okay, listen, we'll take our time. Saturday, all day Sunday, we worked on Monday. We then have a line listing of exactly where any potential contact could have occurred. And then we said, okay, these are the classes that need to be isolated, and these are the classes that can return back to school on Tuesday, so today. So more than half the school is back now, and the other classes are now being investigated. Again, depends on the contact, depends on vaccination status and so on of individuals, and we will obviously react appropriately. So it was really a routine thing that we do. We've done that in the past. It doesn't mean that we close the school for 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes contact. Right? I mean, in this kind of situation, it really does make contact tracing so much easier, right? We're not talking about, hey, there was a case of an employee at a Loblaws. If you happen to be there on September 13th, 14th, it's hard to reach people that find themselves in that position, where in a school setting, it's much easier to do.
It is. And so we have a sort of a captive audience, if you will, for lack of a better word. And so we know, and so we've done this, like I said before, and we do this hand in hand with our schools and our principals and our directors. And so we thought that it would be appropriate and the safest approach. We always use that safest approach to be able just to make sure that we identify which children need to be isolated, which children need to be tested, which classes were in contact and potential contact were at risk or not risk. And then once we did that, we were able to say, okay, these children can go back to school. These children need to be isolated. These children need to be tested, the staff, and so on. So it really has to do with our contact tracing. And Derick, we've had cases since we started at school, and I want to reiterate that, last week we had cases almost the first day of school in our French commissions, but that has nothing to do with the school. These kids had contact a week previously, and they just happened to be positive while they returned to school.
Right.
And so I want people to understand that most of the cases that we're seeing, as a matter of fact, last year I think over 87% of all the cases were not from the school, were from outside of the school, going into the school, and we're seeing that again. And so once it's in the school, we take these. That's why we do these precautions to make sure that it doesn't spread within the school, particularly in an elementary school like this one, where the kids are not vaccinated.
Well, and I wonder then, does this give some justification then for the Ford government and the way they have decided to roll out their back to school program? Because there was some criticism when it came to the idea of leaving it up to the health units to make these decisions. Was that criticism then not justified?
Well, I think that I'm not sure exactly what criticism there was, but I think that there are appropriate interventions that should be done at the provincial level, and there are things that we can do at the local level. We do have the leeway to be able to implement a bit more, restrictions and recommendations. But I can tell you that I sit on the education committee provincially, and I've looked at the protocols, I've looked at what's done. I'm quite satisfied, as are my colleagues at pediatric hospitals and other agencies. And by the way, I'm a pediatrician as well.
Yes.
And so, we were satisfied that the protocols in place, which include, active screening at the door, masking, hand washing, and of course, importantly, social distancing, all these other things that are in place, and the ventilation, the HEPA filters, everything that's been put in there, I think offers multiple layers of protection. And I was even more optimistic, let's put it this way, because this year is a different context. Now we have vaccinations.
Right.
We've got 85% of our population now with one dose, and close to 80%, with second dose. And, in our high schools, that layer of protection should apply to everybody because, kids can get vaccinated 12 and above. And in our elementary schools, that layer of protection would be conferred to the kids by having all the staff and teachers and everybody that can be vaccinated around them vaccinated.
Sorry, go ahead. Finish your thought.
It seems to me that, we've added another layer of protection. Now, we also know that the Delta virus, the Delta variant, is much more transmissible. One individual can spread it to 6 people very easily, whereas if you compare it to the original version, one person would spread it to 2 people. So That's why we're quite careful. We know that it can spread like wildfire, so to speak, and that's why we take these precautions. And like I said, before, when we had these other cases, it was more straightforward because it was just one class, one child, or one staff in one isolated situation, so we just closed one classroom down. And sometimes we have to close multiple classrooms down, and sometimes we have to, as a precaution, close down the school just until we get everything organized in terms of understanding. So that's what happened here. So I just want to clarify that.
No, I appreciate it. And as you said, it was only closed for a day, so, we're not talking about a huge outbreak and an absolute disaster here by any stretch of the imagination. You just wanted to make sure that you could trace it and have enough time to and I think it's very impressive, right, to be able to track it and trace it that quickly. A question I had for you is from what you've heard, is there enough surveillance testing resources for schools?
Well, yeah, you know what? Testing is important. I think testing, when done appropriately, is very, very helpful. There is some surveillance testing that is available. There's also going to be surveillance now, as you know, on unvaccinated teachers, which I think they should all be. I think they should be vaccinated, if you ask me personally. Mm-hmm. But I also want to tell people that, if I test you today, Derick, or I test, myself today, and I'm negative today, it does not mean I don't have COVID. It does not mean I'm infectious. So let's not over-rely on it. It's good as a screening tool, but it really is not preventing. Preventing really is getting vaccinated, getting that ring of protection directly and indirectly with being vaccinated, and all the other mechanisms we're putting in place. Screening and testing is just one piece of the puzzle, but it's not a preventative measure by any means.
Dr. Paul, at 1 p.m. today, we're going to hear from Ontario Health Minister Christine Elliott with more details on Ontario's vaccine passport system. Based on what's been reported so far in the media, is the proposed system sufficient in your opinion?
Yes, I think it is. We need to get some clarifications. I think that it really does the job in terms of two things. Number one, I think it achieves on increasing vaccine uptake. We've been seeing hundreds of people come to our vaccine clinics daily right now since the announcement, which is very good. Secondarily, what it does, it makes sense that as we're trying to increase the amount of herd immunity, we want to get to that 90% level, particularly with the Delta variant. As we're doing that, we're not there yet. This is an added mechanism that's been shown to be able to at least prevent outbreaks. It makes sense that when you put a bunch of vaccinated people together, the risk of a spread or even getting COVID is much, much less than you would put unvaccinated people. So it is a public health measure, and I want to stress again that this is temporary until we get adequate number of people vaccinated, because we do have in Ontario probably about 3.5 million people that are not vaccinated, half of which are children, but there's over 1.5 million people that are not vaccinated that could potentially carry the virus and overwhelm our healthcare system. So far, that hasn't happened. Today, our cases were at 577, but we really need to be careful and keep an eye on that.
Are there any local COVID trends that you're particularly worried about at the moment?
Well, what we're seeing in my area is that in August, 30% of all our cases were between 4 and 18-year-olds. And so really? It doesn't surprise me that now we're getting school cases because these kids, had it before they started school, and so that we're seeing, and we're seeing a younger trend in that age group. We're also seeing a trend of younger individuals, particularly less than 30 years of age, not being vaccinated at the rates that we'd like them to be. And so we're working a lot with that age group. We're working with colleges. We're working with workplaces to be able to increase that uptake, because that's the only way that we'll be able to prevent, a huge fourth wave. Right now, it's in a manageable way, but again, the more people that are not vaccinated, the higher the potential rates of infection and secondary cases. And the other thing too that we want to tell people is that overwhelmingly, one of the trends that I'm seeing, Derick, is that in my area, out of the active cases that we have now, almost 92% are not vaccinated.
Yeah. And how do we reach those? That final, you mentioned, that adult group and that you just spoke about. How we go? Because obviously, what we're doing isn't working. No. How do we reach them?
Well, you know what? There's no magic one solution. There's a combination of solutions. Like, we have areas that we know that are under-vaccinated, and there are more vulnerable populations. There are homeless. There are people that have multiple mental health issues, that have transportation issues, and so on. So we're working with agencies to identify those areas. We're actually doing walk-in clinics. We're doing mobile clinics. We're bringing the vaccine to them. So we're really removing any other barrier or potential barrier that's there. And we do know that there's what we call that middle undecided yet. So we're trying to get those. And in my area, to reach the 90% level, all I need is 7,900 more people to get vaccinated.
Right. Dr. Paul, always a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for joining me again today.
You're welcome.
And I'm sure we'll catch up with you. That's Dr. Paul, Medical Officer of Health for Eastern Ontario, for the Eastern Ontario Health Unit. Coming up after the break, where perhaps you haven't been introduced to Angela MacEwen as of yet. She is the NDP candidate for Ottawa Centre. We're going to be talking about her 10 priorities for Ottawa Centre. We'll go through some of those priorities for herself and talk about, what's important, perhaps how they can make a little bit more headway when it comes to the recent polls that we're looking at that are showing them lagging behind both the Liberals and Conservative Party. This is Derick Fage filling in for Rob Snow. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
I always knew I was going to own my own business, and I've always wanted to have a store. And I sort of figured when the right concept came together at the right time, I would move forward with that plan. And so through doing some environmental initiatives in the restaurant group that I was with prior to opening this store, it just triggered my path towards being more environmentally conscientious and wanting to make more of a difference, and hopefully encouraging, inspiring other people to want to do the same, at which point the idea for All Eco was born. I have some really fun products. I have a really wide spectrum of products. So the things we look for in terms of qualifying products are sustainably made, upcycled, recycled, zero waste, all natural, no harmful chemicals to the environment or to our bodies. We have fun stuff, so really clean burning candles. Lots of really natural body care and skin care. I put a real emphasis on Canadian products. I really try to support up-and-comers, and I always source Canada first. The refill bar is really important to me. It's really huge. I think that's been exciting as well, because I thought it was going to be a real process in convincing people that this is a better way to go. And actually it was just right away there was a built-in affinity towards doing refill, which has been great. We closed, I think, probably we were closed down by before the second week of March. Just didn't feel we could comfortably or confidently stay open, even though I do sell essential products, in terms of the cleaning. But we just didn't feel we could make a safe space for ourselves or our customers at that time, and especially with the information we had at the time. So we did close our doors, at which point I did not have a website, because that was I hadn't even scheduled myself to have a website at that point. So that was sort of full speed moving towards that and trying to drive the business, at the same time still get myself on the map because I was so new. So during that time, as we were building the website, we were still doing a lot of video shopping and private shopping, online shopping, online phone, text. Any way I could do business, I was doing it. And there was really a nice show of support for my business during that time, which was really, really encouraging. And now, we are fully set up online too.
Opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derick Fage here, filling in for Rob Snow all week long on Rogers TV and City News. Talking a lot of politics on this show. We love to talk our politics, of course. Federal election 6 days away till we head to the polling stations. Many of you, by the way, have already voted in the advanced polls. Many of you mailing in your ballots. I've seen a lot of people already placing their votes in advanced polls, so hats off to you. This is an important election. And coming a little bit closer to home, let's meet one of our local candidates. We are joined by NDP candidate for Ottawa Senator Angela MacEwen. Angela, how are you today?
I'm pretty good, thanks. How are you?
I'm very good, and thanks for taking time out of your busy day. What does your day look like so far, Angela?
Well, at 9 o'clock this morning, actually, we had a press conference at the Ottawa Central Station where the Greyhound bus used to go out of.
Oh, yes.
It's been a year since it's been shut down, and the NDP is promising to bring back a bus service through a Crown corporation so that we can have that really essential service for people to get, home to visit their family or in rural areas, or for people in small towns to come into the city. Students especially, lots of seniors really miss having that service. And so we're promising to bring that in at a not-for-profit basis and rebuild that service, interprovincial bus transit and in between cities. So,
is it not possible that perhaps some private investors would come in? I mean, if there is a demand out there, instead of turning it into a public investment, why don't we wait and see? I mean, because we're in unprecedented times, right? Obviously, travel wasn't. We weren't able to travel. We've been in lockdowns.
These private bus services actually find that they can't really make a profit, but it's still essential. Just because people can't afford to pay higher prices for it doesn't mean that it's not a needed service. And I think this is one of those things where it actually addresses both climate change and inequality at the same time. So it helps people that can't afford more expensive solutions, and it helps people get around without a car or flying. So it provides that alternate thing that's missing in the market. And so one of the things we like governments to do is to fill in where there's a market failure. And I think this is really one of those places where the market simply can't provide the service at a cost that people can afford. So,
right.
If the public sector does it. Saskatchewan, I grew up in rural Saskatchewan, and Saskatchewan had a Crown corporation that did exactly this, and it was so useful and necessary, and it's especially helped people in rural areas.
Well, I mean, I worked in Montreal and commuted back and forth between Ottawa and Montreal for 4 years, and when my wife would visit, because of the cost of the alternatives, my wife always took Greyhound, so we certainly. We certainly understand that. I mean, on a personal level, I understand that. It's just, it's whether we can convince, the greater population that it's a good expenditure of money. I want to stick close to home and talk about the Ottawa Hospital. You're asking for a public inquiry to the Ottawa Hospital and suggest moving it to Tunney's pasture. So what you're suggesting is that we scrap it and start over again for a third time.
So that's
Angela.
actually not what we said.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily that it would be scrapped. We want an inquiry. We want accountability for how this decision was made, because we've had an open consultation that chose Tunney's pasture, right?
Right, but the hospital said it wasn't a good site.
Why?
The hospital itself. Well, okay. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I would love to see it at Tunney's pasture. It is a great site. However, the greatest con, Angela, is getting in and out of the site. You're not close to the 417. Yeah. You cannot get emergency vehicles in and out of there quickly. Sure, there's plenty of parking, plenty of land. You can build a super hospital there, but the road infrastructure just isn't there.
Yeah, absolutely. But so there's a whole bunch of issues with the planning of the hospital. I don't think it needs to delay the building of the hospital. I think we can have accountability for how this decision was made, and we can put in place something that will help these decisions be more accountable in the future, because that's the problem that a lot of people have with it.
Well, sure. Okay, Angela, I don't disagree with you there. Yeah. However, you say that's the best place for the hospital.
Well, no, I don't say that.
Okay.
The consultation said that. Right?
Well, I'm sorry. The consultation says that, and you support the consultation. Well, Am I right?
I support transparency and accountability.
Right.
So there was no transparency or accountability in why that changed.
Well, there's been politics played with this, first of all, as well, right? Remember, the Conservative government was going to put it across the street, and then they say, well, the Liberals said, well, wait a minute, that's where they're testing a whole bunch of soil samples, so you can't put it there. That's a terrible place. And the Liberals came into power, and they said, yes, that's a terrible place. Let's put it somewhere else. They had, they looked into it, as you said, had a public inquiry on it, and they came up with Tunney's pasture, and then the hospital said, well, we're a hospital. we understand what we need as far as infrastructure goes, and we cannot put it there. It's not going to work. So although the public inquiry was there and made the recommendation, the people that run the hospital say it just won't work there.
I mean, is that true? Where has that been published, that's how that decision was made? There's no actual transparent or accountable thing that nobody's come out and said, here's how we made this decision, here's why.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, let's look into how the decision was made, but...
That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Let's look into how that decision was made, and let's make sure we have a process in place for making sure these types of decisions are transparent and accountable. And then the other piece of that is let's make sure that we have something in place to make sure the use of federal land is transparent and accountable, because there's lots of green space in Ottawa that is federal land,
right,
and that the NCC and Canada lands and different pieces of jurisdiction have responsibility over, and it's always kind of a ping pong game about who's responsible, who's taking care of it, how can we actually protect this green space and make sure that it's usable for people in Ottawa.
I don't disagree with you there, because Ottawa finds itself in a very unique position, right, where we have municipal, provincial, we have federal, we have the NCC. I mean, there are so many different hands involved in the same pieces of land. It can make things very difficult. Angela, really appreciate you taking the time for us today, and thanks so much, and good luck.
Okay, thanks. Have a good day.
Thanks, you too. That's Angela MacEwen, NDP candidate for Ottawa Centre. That does it for me on the Rob Snow Show. I am Derick Fage. I'm filling in all week long. We had an incredible talkback hour talking about your tax dollars and Ottawa City Services and some of your complaints about how we're doing it. We may roll that into tomorrow's show during the talkback hour. David and I will put our heads together and figure out what you want to talk about. And of course, you can reach out to me on Facebook, on Twitter. Let me know if there's something specifically you'd like to hear us talk about here on the show. Thanks so much for watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News. Sam LaPrade coming up next.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV.